Since Steve is here.
I'm here.
Okay, I started the recording.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
A regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Township Planning Board. In accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building, and also by sending a copy to the newspapers designated by the township for notices. Electronic notice of this meeting has also been provided by posting a copy of the meeting notice along with access instructions on the township's website, and also posting on the main access door of the municipal building. This meeting is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is streamed live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that the board has powers and procedures resembling a court of law. We are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide the basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate for a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Members of the public who are attending this evening digitally will be automatically placed on mute until such time in the meeting that is open for public questions or comments. At that time, members of the public will be unmuted, and they may provide verbal questions as appropriate. Members of the public may also direct questions or comments to Ms. Talley, the board secretary, via the chat or question and answer function on the platform of this meeting. Questions may also be submitted to her by email at jtalley@montclairnjusa.org. First thing on our agenda this evening is our roll call, and I'm here.
Vice Chair Brodock.
I'm here.
Mayor Spiller.
Present.
Mr. Cook.
I'm here.
Councillor Schlager.
Here.
Ms. Willis.
Here.
Mr. Rooney.
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally. Ms. Lockman.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Barr is excused. Mr. Gilmer.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Neese is here. Mr. Battaglia. And we have our board consultants, Mike Dannemiller, Jerry Giosa, and Barton Ross as well. If I can ask people, in order to preserve the quality of the audio, if you're not speaking, to mute your microphone and simply unmute it when you want to speak. That way we can achieve the best audio quality for this meeting.
Okay, we have our minutes from October 19th.
I received amendments to the minutes from Mr. Brodock and I believe Ms. Lockman as well. Are there any additional changes to the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we have a resolution regarding establishing procedures for remote meetings during emergencies.
And I do have, I know that a revised resolution was submitted to board members with comments from Ms. Lockman and Vice Chair Brodock. I don't know if there's any additional comments beyond that.
I move to accept as amended by the comments from Mr. Burdock and Ms. Laughlin.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
All right, and that brings us to the application of 65 Church Urban Renewal.
Okay, I have made Mr. McLeod a panelist, Mr. Stevie a panelist, and let's see, Mr. David a panelist as well. Mr. McLeod, if you can let me know if there's anybody else that will be presented tonight, let me know. Mr. Stevie, you're not mute. You are unmuted.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Mr. McLeod, I see you're here, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, it doesn't look like his audio is connected yet.
I don't think your audio is connected, right? And Mr. David, I see your audio is connected.
Correct.
Okay.
There
So
we
we're
go.
just-
Is that better?
Yes, now I can hear you, Mr. McLeod.
Very good. All right. I've made the
Okay.
magic work.
Is there anybody else that I need to make a panelist who's associated with your presentation?
The only other person we might anticipate having as a panelist would be, I think, Dean Marchetto, who may be joining.
Okay.
So we're kind of playing that one by ear, frankly, because Dean's at another hearing presenting as we speak. So if he can make it over, great. I know he'll be able to add some additional color to what Mr. Stevie's going to testify about as well tonight. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to pull up your exhibits.
Okay. Thanks.
We're going to want to start with the plan exhibit first,
Yeah.
The plan exhibit, which is,
the colorized plans.
Yeah. So
got it.
that would be the third one you're showing there. Yep.
And if my computer blinks out for a minute, it's just because these are large files and it takes a while to load. But here we are.
Totally understood. So, Mr. Stevie, obviously you remain under oath. I'll do Mr. Niece's number for you there. So we've been talking about a number of the particular changes with this project over the last couple meetings, and I think what might be a benefit is you just walking through the colorized plan set that you've got here and detailing really from the ground up what the changes are between the last time that we were here before the board and today, just to kind of give the board a highlight of those changes internally, and then we can move on to the external renderings from there.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having us back. We've been busy since the last time we met, and we've been focused on some of the comments that we've heard from the board, some of the comments that were raised by the board's professionals, and we've done our best to make what we feel are significant improvements to the plan as well as to the appearance of the building. We also had the opportunity to come out and meet with the town redevelopment consultant at the site to look at materials, as well as a series of alternative color palettes and a broader range of materials. And we're excited to present an adjusted building facade look to you guys tonight. And again, those are all based on comments that we heard from you at the previous hearings, comments that we heard from the board's professionals. So I'm going to start by discussing the plan changes that were made. And I'll start briefly in the basement level. A couple things that have happened. There was some discussion about circulation in the upper garage levels. about pedestrian circulation and how we could improve that. And so one of the things that we started to look at was there a way that we could take a couple parking spaces that were still on the upper level for residential and expand the basement level to move those downstairs, thus freeing up some of the space available to make the upper floor adjustments. So we did that. We expanded the parking garage in the basement level. We've added spaces number 35 and 52, and those are in the upper left corner of the basement. So basically, we've extended the basement just to the edge of the planter in the plaza level to pick up those 2 additional spaces, and that allowed us to move 2 spaces downstairs from the upper floors. I just wanted to note one of the comments from the planner's review letter, or the sorry, let me get the review letter. The SCE review letter was about the parking space dimensions, and I wanted to note that all of the parking spaces in the parking garage are 8'6" by 18 feet, and the compact parking spaces are 8 feet by 16 feet. And there is a total of 18 compact spaces, 4 of which are on the upper level, 14 of which are on the lower level. I also wanted to mention that one of his comments was about overhang, and I note that while we show some parking spaces in here with wheel stops, that we would be providing wheel stops in all the parking spaces.
And Bruce, we've and I think Mr. Battaglia's letter notes that that's a deviation from the standard that exists under Montclair's code. And I think if I'm not hearing you incorrectly, the basis for that is that this is a standard parking size for anything in this kind of urban environment. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is an 8'6" parking spot is a standard dimension for urban parking garages, downtown parking garages. In this case, the access aisles, the space behind the parking space is 24 feet, which is compliant and allows for adequate access to the parking spaces.
Okay. Great. And then I'm just looking at the plan to see, I think the only other addition down here was some modifications to the electrical rooms down there, correct?
That's correct. There's that was actually part of the last revision that we did. We moved the electric room downstairs to better facilitate the turning movements in the upper garage floor. So that this just reflects or memorializes that change.
Okay. And then if we can go to the next floor up, I guess we'll.
Right. That would be sheet A2, which is the next slide. Right. That would be sheet A2, which is the next slide. Okay, so this is the ground floor plan. And so this is the ground floor. I'll remind you at the last meeting, there was some discussion about how pedestrians access the parking garage. And they used to access the parking garage to the right of the vehicle entrance to the parking garage. And in some discussions with Mr. Giosa and discussions with our client, after we heard those concerns, we realized that there was a way that we could make some plan changes to allow pedestrian access to come in off the left side of the parking garage, eliminating the need for pedestrians to cross in front of the garage and limiting their interaction with vehicles at that location. So with a bit of reconfiguring and reduction in the gym square footage, the amenity square footage, we were able to bring a walkway in directly from the pedestrian access route, which is protected by bollards and runs down along the side of the building into the plaza space, right where Janice is pointing now. And so that would allow pedestrians to not have to cross the vehicular path, but they could actually exit the garage directly into the plaza space and out into Church Street. This adjustment also better facilitates the move-ins and move-outs from the building We discussed last time that move-ins and move-outs would be monitored by building management. It would have a person from the building assisting people that were moving in and out. So trucks would park in the loading space. They would, with the help of building management, wheel across the driveway outside the building. There's no curbs out there. It's just all one continuous pavement elevation. And they would come into that walkway and access the elevators from, nope, that's the exit corridor. They'd use the same pedestrian access as the regular pedestrians entering the parking garage and come down and then go into the back of the elevators for move-ins. So that's a much cleaner move-in solution as well. And you'll see along that pathway between the column, there is the pay stations for the operation of the parking facility. So as people are entering into the parking garage, they'll pass the pay stations, be able to pay their parking fee, and then get their ticket and use it to exit the parking garage.
Right.
We've located. Sorry.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm looking at this correctly. So this first floor is for retail users. So they go in, they go past the pay stations, but can they then get into the building by entering the vestibule area and using that elevator there to go upstairs?
No, that would be fob access or code access. So it'll be for residents only.
The elevator is fob access or code access.
Yep. The vestibule behind the elevator as well. That would be a secure.
So there's doors there. It doesn't seem like doors are shown.
There are doors there. Yes, I'm sorry if they don't show up, but yes, there are doors at the entry point into the vestibule.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And the retail, the idea about the retail, they would come out, walk along the building into the plaza space and be able to access the retail.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the access to the elevator and actually to the lobby is not available to retail customers. But you're saying there will be locked doors there. Okay, thank you.
It'll be locked doors. It'll be secured.
Mm-hmm.
We've also, again, by moving those parking spaces, 2 parking spaces downstairs, we were able to reconfigure the handicap parking. And we've located 2 of the handicap spaces on the left side of the drive aisle and 1 handicap parking space on the right side of the drive aisle. And again, in the engineering review report, there was a question about whether we could take the parking space at, and it's labeled as parking space 34, and switch it with parking space 3, which is across the aisle. And what that would do is it would make the path of travel for the person using that handicap not have to cross the drive aisle. So we would agree that we can shift that handicap parking spot over to spot number 3 and eliminate that conflict of a handicapped person having to cross the drive aisle to exit the building. So that's an adjustment that we will make. In addition, we have relocated, and there is a service door at the back of the garage. It's been moved now to the lower right-hand corner. And that's going to be a service door that will provide building maintenance access into the alleyway. It'll be a secure door. It'll have a camera on it, an intercom, and be connected to a security system. In the event that someone did get outside into that door, they would have the ability to get out of that alley space by traveling around the building and exiting at the gate that's located at the corner, at the southeast corner of the Church Street portion of the lot. And so that's just again, it's for building maintenance and for services.
And Bruce, if you can walk through briefly just the couple of changes that are in the remainder of the parking area there. I know there were a couple of things that got moved around to provide better access up on that end.
Sure. We have the transformer location in the western side of the building, but there was some spaces that were adjusted to. It allowed us actually to get a larger trash room, so we'll have more room for storage of the trash on site, and then we have that secondary access egress point, which is there's two doors. One is an egress door for the emergency egress for the stair coming down through the building, and the other is an emergency egress from the garage. And that's required because of the travel distance from that upper corner up around space number 22. The travel distance for a pedestrian to have to go all the way around in the event of emergency and use the pedestrian access point was too far. So we did need to provide that second means of egress in that location there. The other change is that in this case, we're showing the retail broken into 2 spaces versus 1 space. Square footage and everything remains identical. It's just the client is looking for an option to have 2 retail components instead of 1.
And Bruce, I think the only other thing we discussed was, I think it was Mr. Battaglia's letter as well. There was a comment about the location of the emergency vehicle chargers.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, not emergency vehicle, electric vehicle chargers.
Electric vehicle, yep. So we currently have 2 EV charging stations in the basement for residential parking. And Mr. Battaglia had mentioned that he was wondering if there would be an opportunity for us to move one of those charging stations to the upper level and place it in one of the residential parking areas up there so that during the daytime when that space is available to public, it might be used by them for charging. And our client has agreed to do that. And I just wanted to also note that we're providing 2 vehicle charging stations per the redevelopment plan, but we will have infrastructure in place to expand that should it be necessary so that we can add more electric vehicle charging stations in these 2 locations should it become needed.
Great. And then, Bruce, I think the other big change internally as we run through the upper floors was really just some cleanup items. I know we talked about, you've talked about the door on the trash room, which I think is much appreciated.
Right.
As well as things like highlighting bibs for hoses, and I think also the location we discussed adjusting the location of the affordable units within the building. So if you can just kind of run up the tiers here and briefly highlight those changes for the board as well, that'd be useful.
Sure. So I think that the next slide A3, is the amenity level slide. And I can pretty much do all of the testimony for the rest of the slides from this. So there were 2 primary concerns about the upper level plans. We wanted to show that we could service the amenity deck. So we've shown or indicated that we will be providing outdoor electric outlets and we will be providing hose bibs on that amenity level so that we could maintain and take care of the planters in that location and that we could clean and service that amenity deck as well. The other change or more significant change on these plans is the actual allocation and distribution of the affordable units. There was some concern or some discussion about the size of the affordable units. And so we have readjusted the floor plans and the locations of the affordable units to become units that I would call more in keeping with the square footages of similar projects in Montclair. And so we still have the 8 affordable units that we need to have. We have 1 studio. That studio is at 540 square feet. We have 5 2-bedroom units, and they range in size from the smallest being 1060 to the largest being 1260. And we have 2 3-bedroom units at 1,185 square feet. And those units are identified in these plans with a blue color and they're demarcated with the letter A for affordable. And so if you flip through the other floor plans, you'll just see the locations for those units broadcast on the floor plans.
Okay, great. So that's the interior of the building. Which way do you want to go in talking about the exterior of the building?
Well,
Bruce?
I hear that Dean is still on his meeting downstairs, so we can run right into the next exhibit, which would be Janice, I believe it's called. Just look at my screen real quick.
Yeah, Bruce, do you want the updated render or the updated brick presentation?
Updated brick presentation, please.
Okay.
So at our last meeting, there were some concerns that were raised by the board, some of the board's professionals, that the materials that were presented were stark in their coloring and contrast, and so we did two things. We met with Mr. Smith at the job site, and we brought the original materials with us, and we looked at those, and then we brought a palette of other materials with us so that we could look and see, you know, what tones matched or blend better with the neighboring context. And then we came back. We met with our client. We met with multiple brick manufacturers, and we sought out an alternate brick solution that we think is very handsome, and it does a few different things that I think that are very exciting. And so this is just a quick presentation. This is the original brick that was submitted. It's a palmetto. It's called Whitestone. And if you can go to the next slide, Janice. This is the rendering that we presented in our last meeting. And when we presented this rendering, the reactions that we received were that it lacked detail. The contrast was significant between this building and the neighboring buildings, and that it felt too stark and too contemporary or too modern. And so the next thing, when we came back just from that meeting, we were looking at the detailing of the metal panels, and in the rendering process, that detailing didn't get detailed the way that we wanted. So we had worked on some of the detailing of the metal panels, and I'll ask you to flip to the next slide, Janice. And so this slide shows a little bit better the detailing that we're looking to achieve on the building, with the shadow lines and the jointing in the material. And you can see that there's a significant difference between the previous slide and this slide with regard to the detailing of the metal panels. And so once we were at the job site, we realized a couple of different things. The neighboring buildings are not one single color. So they have a blend of materials and a blend of coloring to them. So if you look at the Wedgwood building, it has a terracotta surface, but it's actually a variety of different colors in the terracotta. So it doesn't appear as a solid tone, it appears more as a stone looking material. If you look at Christ Church, the brick that Christ Church is made of is actually a blended brick. It has a couple of different colors or tones in the brick, so there's a variety to it. And so we looked at the rest of the buildings in that area. The Unitarian Church building has a blended brick. I believe it's the Claridge building on the corner has a blended brick. And so that was something that we took into consideration. The other comment that we heard was that, again, with the white being a stark color, that we should look at warming up the building so that the building had a warmer tone, and that there would be a way of using that tone to tie it into the neighborhood a little bit better. So we worked with a bunch of different brick manufacturers. We looked at a lot of different brick samples, and if you could flip to the next slide.
Mr. Steve, while we're doing that, were these slides presented to the board? Are they part of the evidentiary record? Or are you just now presenting these for the first time?
These were submitted last week, but we are presenting these for the first time. They probably should be entered in as exhibits.
If you wouldn't mind, after you finish your presentation concerning these, perhaps we should double back and do just that.
Yeah, we can definitely take care of that, Arthur.
Very good.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have led off with that. With, I guess each one of these documents is dated 2020-1204. These were all the exhibits that were submitted to Ms. Talley on last week to update these. So we'll make sure those all get properly I's dotted and T's crossed as they ought.
Right. And we did drop physical samples as well.
I'm sorry, hang on a sec, Bruce.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we only got the one set of brick on the right in our packet, if I'm not mistaken, and not the one on the left.
The one on the left is the original brick that was submitted previously.
There we go. That makes more sense.
So, just so it's on record, we also submitted the material palette in physical samples, and they're at the planning office.
But these slides, do we have copies of these slides as you're showing them to us this evening? Or these?
No, these are exhibits that we're sharing.
Okay. All right. Just to let you know, though, it's difficult for us to see the detail on these exhibits if we don't have copies of them, because of the limited nature of the detail on the screen on the WebEx.
Understood.
Go ahead, proceed.
Okay. The brick on the right is the brick that we resubmitted to the town. It has a warmer tone to it. It has a variety of color to it, ranging from a light, medium, and a dark. And it also has some texture on the face of the brick that I think helps blend or be more harmonious with the neighboring building context. And then if we go to the next slide. So this is a rendered version of the new brick. And you can see that this has the range of brick color in it. It has a warmer tone. And there was an adjustment made to the metal paneling as well to also work towards that warmer tone. We switched from the original dark zinc finish to a warmer zinc patina finish that has a warmer tone to it. And I think, again, works very well with the tone of the brick. We think that these... Sorry.
Question? So the changes that you're making to the metal panels, that's throughout the building, not just the front that we're looking at here?
That's correct. We think that it's still important that the building hold together the initial design concept, which is it's basically a two-color scheme. It's the metal panel material and then the masonry material, and then the color palette would then still primarily be this two-tone color palette. But we do think that the range of brick color, again, blends better with the neighboring buildings. We think that it also takes the building out of the realm of being stark and actually adds some warmth to the building that I think actually plays off the detailing better and maybe takes it the contemporary edge off the building by using the blended brick. And I think that we looked around at some of the other buildings in town that have brick detailing on them, and while the detailing on the traditional buildings might be coins in the corners of the building and things of that nature, we're using that patterning and detailing between the windows to kind of be referential to that. It kind of has a little bit of an Art Deco feeling to it.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
In between the windows where those lines are they stepped back, or are they?
Yes, that would be that would be a texture in the brick, and the way we anticipate it and have detailed it in our architectural set is that there would be 3 brick that project, and then 3 brick that set back, and then 3 brick that project, and then 3 brick set back, similar to the way coins are installed at the corners of a building. It would be a pattern and a texture similar to that.
I don't know what coins are in the
Coins are typically the stones that are used at the corners of a building, and sometimes they simulate that in brick so that there's a patterning at the corner of a building.
Okay. Now the metal panels that are to the left of the building.
Yes.
So if I was standing directly in front of the building, I will only see that one course of windows. Is there like something behind it?
No, again, I do have some other images of that courtyard space that I could show you again, but the concept of this is that 3-story masonry band wraps around into the plaza space, and then the metal material at the top of the building wraps around, and then it comes down at the back of the plaza space and creates a facade that completes the plaza space. And so that's it's a way of using the material at the top to create a highlight or a focal point at the end of the plaza space. And once you go around that plaza space, then it turns back to the brick facade wrapping around. And I'll show you that in the other rendered elevations. And then if we can go to the next slide, please. So this is just the brick on its own, a close-up image. The brick, when you see the physical sample of the brick, it has a warm earth tone to it. It's not white. It actually has a little bit of a brown or a buff tone to it, which is very nice. And then the darker tone has a little bit of a gray in it, which just ties it to the metal panel. And then the next slide. So this just shows the 2 renderings, the original version with the white brick on the left-hand side, and the new version with this warmer ranged brick on the right-hand side. And again, I think that we were pleasantly surprised about the changes that occurred just by changing the color of the brick on the facade.
Great. All right. And then
So,
Bruce, do you want to walk through the? I'm sorry.
Just a question, do you have anything that shows the rendering with the closest buildings part of the picture? The Wedgwood building and the church?
we have the other renderings that we prepared last time that we can show you with the materials on.
Not with the new brick?
We do with the new brick, and I'll show you that next, yeah. I don't have this expanded out in an elevation form to show you, but
Yeah, so Janice, if you want to go to, I think it's the updated render package, I think is what it's called. Is that right, Bruce?
Before we move on to this one, I think we need to mark the previous exhibit.
Yep.
I have it as A50, updated brick presentation dated December 4th, 2020.
And just for the benefit of the record, Bruce, those were prepared by your office, Marchetto, Higgins, and Seavey.
That's correct.
And so this next one will be A51. Right, updated render package.
Right.
Okay.
And this is
Janice, excuse me, Janice, my numbering is a little different. I show 850. A50 is a letter from Gibbons, and A51 is a parking management plan.
Oh,
That's,
yep, you're correct. Mr.
Okay,
Nance.
then clearly I put the wrong version of the exhibits in my book. Let me get this. I thought I had everything organized here. Let's see.
if you need it, Janice, I have an update of the exhibit list that I will send.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Okay, we're up to A57.
That's right.
Okay, so A57 is the updated brick presentation, and this will be A58.
What do you want to call this?
This will be the updated render package, new brick colors, dated December 4th, 2020.
And Bruce, like the previous set, this is all prepared
Okay.
by your office, correct?
I just Dean just informed me that he's joined the meeting.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if we can have him come on and comment.
Sure.
I'll swear him in if that's what he wants to do.
I don't think I've ever seen someone so eager to provide sworn testimony, but yes, Dean is there. So I see he's added. He might have to just do like I did and add his video, or add his audio rather.
Janice, we may want to flip back to the previous render submission.
Okay, but I can't, regarding Mr. Marchetto, I don't have control of his audio. He should be, once his audio is turned on, he should be able to speak because he's now a panelist. And you want me to go back to the previous exhibit, A57?
7.
Okay.
Can you enable your audio, please?
That would be Mr. Marchetto has to enable it. He can do it,
Yeah.
He has to do it himself.
Sound
Yeah.
pitch at the
There
bottom
we
of your
go.
screen.
All right, he's on.
Hello.
Now, do you want to go to updated brick presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Dean, we did run
Yeah.
through these.
Oh, you did.
Before you do, Mr. Marshall, I don't think you've appeared at this before.
Not at this hearing.
All right, so can we, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Yes. My name is Dean Marchetto. It's spelled Marchetto, and I'm principal and founding partner of Marchetto, Higgins, Stevie Architects.
Great. And can you give the board the benefit of your background, education, and experience?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Architecture from New York Institute of Technology from 1981. I apprenticed at the firm of Gwathmey, Siegel and Associates for 3 years, and I started my own practice in 1981. We have a practice of 40 architects located in Hoboken and Jersey City. I am a fellow in the American Institute of Architects. I've been following this application very carefully with Bruce, my partner of 25 years on this project, and I've appeared in front of your board several times, most recently with the Seymour Street redevelopment plan.
And Mr. Chairman, we'd offer Mr. Martetto as also an expert in the field of architecture.
We'll accept it.
Thank you. So, Dean, just so you're kind of oriented to where we are, we've kind of walked through the updated brick package, but I know you'd had some input in here as well into, design, the design of this, the quality and level of the design, and I wanted to ask you for your kind of expert opinions with regard to the design of the building and how the new brick package fits with it.
Yeah. Okay. So the image here on the right is the original image that we had presented. It calls for an interpretive modern design. We were very careful to try to meet the goals of your redevelopment plan, talking about the top and the bottom in different styles. We understand, and I tuned in on the last hearing, the board's concerns about the modernity of the white brick on the base of the building. And so Bruce and I reviewed your concerns, and we went from more of a monochromatic white brick with a speckle to more of a blend brick, a brick that is a little bit more traditional in its pattern and coloration. There are several different shades of beige and white in a blend brick. And as Bruce probably showed you, the side-by-side comparison of the two bricks, we thought that maybe if we went to the blend brick, it would be the best of both worlds, where we would have this brick solid base that is decorative with the detailing, and then the zinc-colored metal roof with the detailing up there, and that on the right side you see the blended brick providing a little bit more of a traditional finish on the exterior brick. And I just wanted to weigh in on my concern. I thought that we've been working on this building, I guess, for several years, and been in front of several boards in Montclair over the past 6 months. We love this building. I'm particularly interested in seeing it reach its best rendition, and I think that the board's suggestion that the building maybe become a little bit more traditional in its brick brought us to the blended brick on the right-hand side, and we're hopeful that this would meet with your approval. We think it's a great compromise, and we're looking forward to your review.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Bruce, do you want to talk more, or Dean, do you want to walk through the render package as well, just to kind of highlight how these changes impact the design of the building overall?
Yeah, I think that would be a different, yeah.
It is, yep. So this is just for the clarity of the record. This is A58, right, Janet? Okay.
So
thanks.
This render package is similar to the previous render package in that we have the initial rendering that we presented last time, followed by the revised rendering. So this is the original rendering that we put with the white brick. And then if you flip to the next slide, it shows the warmer tones and blended brick.
So the warmer tones clearly pick up a reference to the zinc-colored metal panels up on the roof. There's a little bit of a beige gray color. It's modeled into the brick. I think it holds the top and the bottom together, while they're still separate and distinct, as the redevelopment plan calls for. There's a compatibility in the coloration of this blended brick.
If we can go to the next slide. So this is a rendering of, again, the first rendition. There are a couple of adjustments that we made based on other comments from the board, and that was to use the same detailing at the top of the building with the cap being projected and bringing the recessed band around the building. So that now wraps around the entire building. And then the other thing that you'll see on this is that we've introduced the band elevator bulkhead and changed the material on the elevator, the other bulkheads from wood to metal panel. So we can flip to the next slide with the new brick.
One of the witnesses, I don't know what everybody has going on, but we are getting an echo. So could everybody that present their mute?
That's better. Okay. So again, this rendering shows the new brick. It shows the detailing in the metal panel work that's consistent with the first image that we showed you. It shows the detailing wrapping around at the top of the building through the brick moving west. It also shows the change in materials at the top of the building. There's no longer the wood material up there, but it's rather the same metal material as the front facing of the building.
Janice, can you blow up the rendering? Increase the, so that we can get a closer look at the top of the building? Can you get any bigger? Keep going. If it'll get any bigger, keep going.
Okay, if you can just pan, that's it. Slide to the right, maybe.
So for the elevator bulkhead, that is brick, and the panels to the solid gray images will be metal.
That's correct. So the brick material will be used to clad the elevator bulkhead. You can see that we're also going to carry the detail, the recessed detail, and the cap on that. And then the two flanking components that form the exit stair and the amenity space on the roof will be clad in the metal panel to match the rest of the building.
Can you pan to the left, Janice, please?
Mr. Stevie, can you describe the bottom part of the band along the top? Is that a soldier course of brick?
The band itself would be a soldier course of brick, and then between the window head and the soldier course will be a running bond of brick.
Okay. And is this
and
brick
that's,
the 12-inch brick still?
Yes, it's still the Norman brick, and that band itself is actually recessed. It'll recess about an inch, so you'll get a shadow line in there as well.
So is that a soldier course of 12-inch brick?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Bruce, do you want to go on to the what I'm guessing I think is the Bloomfield Avenue side of the view?
Yes.
Before you leave there, behind the elevator bulkhead, what is that structure? That dark structure?
There's two components. One is an egress stair. That's the one on the right. And the one on the left is the vestibule for access to the roof deck.
And are those clad in the metallic as well?
That's correct.
Okay.
Clad in the same metal panels.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Janice, we can go to the next slide, but I think you need to zoom out first. So this is the original rendering for when the stucco was on the lighter side. And then the next slide is of the new. And in this one, you can see that we've introduced the scoring in the panels between the windows to be similar to the brick facade on Church Street. We've introduced the banding at the top of the building and the projecting cornice, projecting cap. And then the metal panel of the eastern portion of the facade has been detailed similar to the metal paneling on the rest of the building. And then we've used a second stucco color that reflects the color of the metal panels beneath the windows on this facade.
Can you zoom in, Janice? If you can get closer, please do.
To the right of is that metal under the windows?
No, that'll be a stucco that will be similar in color to the metal panel.
What about in texture?
It will have, the intention is that the stucco, the lighter color stucco will have a smoother finish, and there'll be a little bit of a texture to the stucco under the window, the darker stucco.
Good
And-
question. How are the units heated and cooled?
They have a central, it's a split system. So there is a heating and cooling unit located in a closet within the space, and they have a condenser on the roof.
So, and do those windows slide open or crank open?
They crank open.
They crank open. Okay. Even the ones that are single paned?
No, yes, the ones that are single pane do. The ones where there is a large window and a smaller window, only the smaller window is operable.
Okay, thank you.
Can you pan to the left, Janice, please?
So here you can see that the detailing in the metal panel is very similar to the detailing in the metal panel on the Church Street side of the building.
I just have a question for you. Do those panels, the metal panels, do they heat up and cause in the summertime the heat to stay inside the building?
I don't know. I'm sure that they heat up, but I don't think that there's insulation behind those metal panels that will keep the system equal.
Can you pan down a little bit, Janice? Can you pan back up? Now, on the side of that, the metal feature on this corner, on the side of that feature that would face Park Street,
Yes.
is that detailing under on the bottom part of the metal panel that is on each side of the window? Those light spots? What is that? Or is where the right where those the cursor is? Yeah.
They just may be marks in the panel, but the panels are intended to be flat, similar to the panels on the facing Bloomfield Avenue. There will be, and I think you can see one in the upper left of that image, there will be some vents that will come through, but they are painted out to match. They're made of the same material or painted to match the material of the wall that they're in. And that happens on other sections of the building as well.
Bruce, I suppose those are reflections from something on the roof.
It might be, yeah. But they're not intended to be a detail or anything like that.
So a question, where the metal panel meets the stucco, is there an indentation there or are they flush?
There'll have to be some waterproofing condition there, but
Talk about the vertical, I'm sorry, the horizontal.
yeah, the horizontal, there'll be some kind of a flashing there, but I think they're intended to be in the same plane, or the metal may be just slightly proud.
Have you considered the metal as a different color, perhaps, instead of this battleship gray? Does the metal come in another color?
This metal is a textured metal that has a similar color to the natural material of zinc, Robin. And we looked at other colors, but this is the color we prefer. It's been a material of choice for us. It's a beautiful material. I don't know if you have the full samples. I find it's a very noble, rich material with a depth in it. It's not a flat battleship gray, but it has a complexity and a depth to it. And if you were able to take a sample and look at it close up, it develops a patina that isn't flat. It's a very rich, really rich material that we're very fond of.
You described it as suede-like.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. There's a building, Mount Kimberly Academy, has a material very similar to this on its facades.
It's very hard to get that depth of the material in a rendering like this. It's just really hard. But I'm sure Janice has the sample. If you wanted to hold it close up and feel it and look at it, Robin, it's very complex. It has a kind of like a pattern in it.
Okay, thank you.
So the vents, those square vents, is that what they're actually going to look like, or are they going to be away from the facade, or are they going to be grills? What are they venting?
They are relatively flush, louvered grill. They get painted out to match the adjacent surface, and Dean and I pride ourselves very much in that we try to make them disappear as much as possible, and they don't become a nuisance in the facade.
And what do they vent?
They're venting the exhaust for the bathroom and the kitchen.
So there will be a grill on it?
There'll be a louver on it.
Yeah, just
Yes.
rather than a flat. So it's not going to look like this. It'll color it, but it will be a grill.
There will be a line across a louver across each of those squares. Yes.
Okay.
What's the dimension of them?
They're designed to fit within the brick module that we're working with. So I'm assuming in this case that we would combine the two together and become a 12 by 12 because the brick is a 12-inch long brick.
And these vents are going to be also on the stucco facade also, right?
Pardon me?
The vents will also be present on the stucco facade?
That's correct. You can see them they're centered under those wider bands between the windows. It's subtle, but you can see that.
Hey, Janice, load up.
We do not have them on the Church Street facades, so nothing facing Church Street has the vents in them.
So I see the very faint
Light square.
lines. So that's the number that's going to appear. Basically, that's the pattern on the building.
Yes. And we have worked very hard to keep them in line with the detailing or the pavers in the building.
Okay. Janice, can you pan to the left and then down to get to the bottom of the bottom of the metal? Yeah, stop there. Go back up. Go back up a little bit so that you get the next floor also. Yeah, okay, there you go. The variance in the pattern next to the windows beneath the metal facade for those two windows as opposed to the other windows, I guess particularly it shows up in the second floor window. That's just a mistake of the rendering, right?
Yeah, that window will be all, it'll be the same window color as the rest of the windows.
And the patterns will be consistent.
Yes.
All of the stucco facades.
Yes, and they'll be in a similar score pattern to the brick pattern in the Church Street facade.
Right. But only with respect to the horizontal score.
That's correct.
And no vertical score.
Right.
So the panels below the windows are going to be a rougher material, a rougher texture than the lighter, smooth stucco.
And again, when I say rougher, it is minimal. There is a textural difference between the two stuccos. They're both relatively smooth. However, the gray does have a little bit of a texture to it, so that it just helps it feel a little darker than the smooth stucco of the lighter color.
And Bruce, is part of the reason for that just to create some contrast to both in the material and in the coloring?
That's correct.
Okay.
On the front facade, we have the contrast between the texture of the brick and the texture of the metal panel. So we want to try and keep that texture going on the Bloomfield Ave facade and the east facing.
So this is kind of the reverse pattern because you've got a very smooth metal mixed with a textured brick. And the metal is the dark part. The smooth part is the dark part. Now this is the opposite.
So John, this is kind of like a coarse sandpaper finish, and there's a texture associated with that is intended to pick up the pattern in the metal, which I told you before was more of a textured finish. Even though it's smooth, it has a richness into it. It's not solid, monochromatic. It has a little bit of a pattern in it, and so the coarseness of this gray stucco picks up and relates to that same pattern in the metal.
Do we have a sample of the stucco in these colors?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm really going to have to look at the materials, because in order to get a better idea of how this is going to look on the building, given the limitations of the renderings and what we've been able to look at in advance of the meeting.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, what I might suggest is, and I know we've had a lot of conversations with Mr. Smith and Mr. Ross as well on this, it might be worthwhile at this stage, because I know this kind of wraps up what Dean and Bruce's affirmative testimony would be with regard to the architecture, to kind of have their side of the equation chime in as well with Ira and Barton. I think both of them are on. And then if there's any concern at that point, maybe it's something that, we as a condition of approval continue to work with Barton and Ira to, refine that image. and move it forward in that regard. But I think we've done a lot to work with, and I thank both the board and Ira and Barton in that regard to do a lot of work to push this forward.
I hear what you're saying, but we're the ones, the members of the board, we're the ones who are going to have to make the decision on this. And of course, we value the opinion of Ira and Barton, but since we're the ones who have to actually make the decision, I think we're the ones who have to have the good grasp on what the materials actually look like.
Understood.
And how they're going to appear in the real world. And quite frankly, what you've shown me, I mean, I understand it, but I don't have a good idea what it looks like in real life. I don't have a good. I'm familiar with the Montclair Kimberly Academy, but I never thought of any of the material on its facade having a suede look to it. So I'm at a loss for that. It's going to be necessary for, prior to voting on this, I wouldn't want to leave this to, a protracted after the fact, kind of debate on what material should be here and how it's going to look, and the overall impact. So, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't feel in the position to vote on this until I get a better handle on what these new materials are going to actually look like.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just, Janice, we provided a lookbook or a material sample book that actually shows the texture of the stucco in it.
I've got it. I've looked at. Unless it's something new, if it's the same one that's posted online, I've seen that. And again, it's a picture. And all these subtle variations that you're talking about are not conveyed in those pictures. And even so, when you had this rendering up, when I look at the, I see the two pictures for the side-by-side for the last renderings and the current renderings. And when I look at on my screen, the rendering of the past rendering, because we don't have the current rendering to look at. But when I look at it on my screen, I see 3 different colors. And it's because of the screen resolutions. These are digital reproductions, okay? And they're not real world color impact, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We've learned the hard way. It makes a difference. So.
May I ask, Janice, the so-called look books, are they actually presentation boards or are they materials boards themselves?
It's two things. The lookbook is a document that was submitted, it was included in your, I don't think it was included in your packages. I sent it following the packets being mailed. But I do have actual material samples in my office. And any board member who wants to look at those material samples, the old ones and the new ones, can come view them. They just have to call me and make an appointment, and I'll certainly bring them to you downstairs to review.
That's what we definitely I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's why we ask for these things in advance of the meeting so that we have time to do this beforehand. But these weren't available with enough notice to do this.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, not to beat the horse here, but this is something where the architectural decision making as to the particulars of this is something we've been working very, very closely with the board's professionals. Certainly, it's something where we heard the board's concerns, and if that's something where this is something that's going to really be the cardinal concern, I think there's probably a mechanism we can work through to allow the board the ability to work through this with a post hoc mechanism and say, look, we've selected either A or either B, and said, look, there's a window of brick that we're comfortable with, but I don't think we're in a position where we need to be delaying the overall approval of at least the concept to wait for further rounds of architectural review, because that's just not consistent with where we are, you know?
I appreciate your opinion.
Yep.
Do you have any more affirmative testimony to present?
So on the architectural side, I think the only thing I'll offer is if Bruce or Dean have any kind of summary remarks with regard to the architecture itself.
I mean, we've heard quite a bit about it. I think we all get it.
I think so too. I think so too. So I think
the members of the board who have questions, further questions about seeing here.
Yeah, I would like to hear what Ira has to say about this.
Right. We'll get to Ira and Barton on this. But are there questions of these witnesses? From what we've heard with them this evening and what they talked about, the changes. All right, doesn't sound like it. So why don't we move on to Ira and Barton?
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, what I might just suggest too is I know I've got Sony David on as well. If we run through the architectural kind of review here, Sony's got some final civil markups that we can walk through with regard to the dates and the fence that were proposed. But those are obviously issues we can get to next. I just want to flag that as something that we're going to get to.
They're going to run through they're going to run through what again?
Sorry. There are the two gates that were proposed, as well as the fencing on the Unitarian Church side of things.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only other affirmative testimony we've got. And then
okay. Why don't we go ahead and get that out of the way then?
Okay, great.
Before we do that, I think, Mr. Marchetto, I think you are the offender so far as the background noise goes. I could be wrong, but if you could turn off your, that would be helpful. Thank you.
And Chair Wood, do you want to take public questions for Mr. Stevie and Mr. Marchetto after we hear Mr. David's testimony as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Then Sony, I think you're up.
Great, thanks so much, Cam. So I just wanted to quickly highlight the changes that we made as a result of the comments from the last planning board hearing.
Mr. David, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, sir. Do you acknowledge that you remain under oath from the last hearing?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to start with the site plan, and this is a site plan that was submitted last revised 11/25/20. I don't know if we need to enter this as an exhibit.
I think it already is.
Okay.
Just so I see it here, this is part of A53 for everyone's benefit, and is CS 101 as prepared by Langen.
Great, thanks so much. So as Cameron had mentioned, just hearing the board's concerns related to some of the headlights coming out of the exiting lane of the garage, we had wanted to address the wood and metal fence that was added along the property line along this edge. If you zoom in towards the loading dock area, you could see the extents of it. And so you could see that there's a length of fence that's been added just to the left or just to the west of the loading dock striped area that essentially has a limit of the 4-foot high screening fence along the entire edge that basically goes back to the building line, and that leads me into the next portion of it that shows the 4-foot high screening fence gate. It's a wooden metal gate that provides access to that portion of the alleyway, which was another concern, another comment from the board. And then if you go all the way to the east side, there is also an additional second gate that's proposed along that edge as well, with the same wood and metal finish that's proposed on the other side as well.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying about a wooden metal finish. What does the gate look like?
Sure. So the posts are actually a metal powder coated finish, and there's these horizontal slats that make up the wooden fence and the gate. They're both matching in nature. What we were trying to do essentially is provide something that accommodated the board's comments related to having a metal gate while still providing a wooden fence. And so we married the two together, having a
Nope,
and
that one.
maybe the detail sheet would be a good
Yeah.
I think we're looking at what is it, 502? Is that right, Sonny?
correct. It would be detail
Okay.
sheet 502.
Okay. So if anyone wanted to see it, there's the decorative pavement.
I'm working on getting all the exhibits up. Sorry. Okay, what sheet do you want to go to now?
It's CS 502. It's the detail sheet.
All right. Let me give me a moment
Yeah, sure.
to. All right. It's moving very slowly.
It's because Bruce's pictures are so big.
I've got, yeah, there's so many, I have so many things open. I apologize, but I'm trying to, if I could close any of these for now and then bring them up later, I might be able to work this a little bit better. I'm going to close the material lookbook because that was not presented.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is one sheet. Okay, so it's a different sheet. Which sheet do you want?
It's CS 502, the detail sheet.
CS. Yes. Okay. Here it's coming. I just clicked on it.
Thank you.
Chair Wynn, this is Mike Danamiller. If the computer gods really want to show us the site plan, can I ask one question about the site plan since we're still looking at it?
Sure, why not?
Sure. So this is Mike Danamiller. There was a detail provided for a bicycle rack. The location of that bicycle rack was questioned but never identified that I can remember. I wanted to make sure it was outside of the pedestrian accessible route. Did you locate the bicycle rack site plan?
I could have to zoom in and check if it's on here. It is located on the landscape plan. It's in the southwestern corner of the plaza area, adjacent to the driveway entrance.
Okay, but outside of the sidewalk area? It's not blocking the sidewalk, is it?
No, it's not in the sidewalk. I'm sorry. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sony, anything else you want to highlight on the site plan while we're looking at it?
Yeah, sure. So just taking a look at the westernmost edge, it's on the northern portion of the site. There were planting along that alleyway edge, and one of the concerns also was providing arborvitaes to enhance the view of the church along that western edge, which we changed on the landscape plan as well.
And then I think the only other change we'd made to the landscape plan was, and I think we put this in the response to Ms. Talley's letter, was we'll work with the township arborist to sort out what exactly the proper trees are to put along the street, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it'd be helpful, I could try to describe the fencing and gate while that's being proposed up. So essentially what I was describing was a marriage, I guess, of the metal and the wood. with having wooden panels where you have, oh, there you go.
There we go. There it is.
Oh, perfect. So if we could zoom into the gates, maybe we could take a look at that in a little bit more detail.
Along the bottom of the,
Right.
right, on the left-hand side.
Correct. Number 9 and 10. And so if you could see the posts on either side of either the gate or the fencing, those are powder coated metal posts, and then you have these slats essentially that are horizontal in nature, and that's an exterior grade wood, which would make up both the fence as well as the fence gate.
And Sony, just to be clear, that fence gate would be also, so that fence gate is adjacent to the Unitarian Church site. Is this the same fence gate that would be on the eastern side of the property as well?
That's correct.
Okay.
What's the anticipated color of that? Is it natural wood? Is it stained dark?
It would be something that it's probably a lighter wood color. I think we'd have to coordinate that with Bruce and the final building selection, just making sure that it's in line with his final selections on the building.
And did you work that out with the neighbor that gate that's on Church Street would run onto the neighbor's property as well as this property? So it's one gate that covers the garbage bins that are currently behind the building on the corner?
So this gate only accommodates the alleyway entrance. It would be completely within the property of the applicant. Right.
So you didn't work something out, you weren't able to work anything out with your neighbor so you'd cover the whole, from your property to the tip of their property would all be enclosed with this gate, no?
Right. Everything on the applicant's property would be uncovered. So the Wedgwood building would remain its own.
Yeah, because you had said that you were going to try to work something out, I thought, with the neighbor to see if you could run the gate across from his property to your property.
Right. So we had looked at that and talked about it with ownership, and it made more sense for us to keep everything controlled within the site, so that everything's controlled on the property, and that this fence really only covers that portion of the site, or only just covers rather our portion of the site.
That's too bad, because it gives you the opportunity to cover up this eyesore, which is the garbage that's behind the corner building, if you could work something out with them. But I understand your point, yeah.
Yeah, and look, it's not something that I think we take off the table. It may be something that we talk to the Wedgwood about in the future, but for purposes of the application moving forward, right now, the biggest concern is locking up the site,
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So does that screening then extend, while we're kind of on that area where the gas meters are, does that screening then extend along the property boundary?
Sony can.
No, it's basically just the gate that would essentially restrict access. So if we could zoom into that easternmost corner.
How does it restrict access? Isn't that an open area?
Second. No, so there's an existing fence along that line right now that would continue to be maintained and up there.
Is that a chain link fence?
Correct. That's an existing chain link fence along that edge, along the property line edge, all the way up to the existing building.
Does it have any of the privacy slats in it?
No, it does not.
Is there a way those could be added? I'm just trying to find a way to screen that, bank of gas meters that I think are going to look a bit like an eyesore on Church.
Yeah, I think we could provide something that would essentially allow screening to occur along that chain link fence if it was necessary. Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
How tall is the fence?
It's 4 feet high. The existing fence?
Yeah.
It's 4 feet high.
Is that really going to screen anything?
Bruce, do you have an idea of what the meters are going to be mounted at along that side of the building?
Hang on. Bruce, you there? You're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. I don't know exactly how high they're going to go. That's something we're going to have to work through in the construction documents. I would assume they're probably going to be about 4 or 5 feet above grade.
And that Bruce and Sony, just so I'm clear, that's going to be dictated more by whomever the gas supplier is than us, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I would assume they would place them at a height where they didn't have to bend over in order to read
right,
them.
Or one where they're getting onto a ladder to read them, right? So
yeah.
In either case, that may be something where the screening that I think Mr. Broderick, sorry, you'd proposed might be useful, and it's something where we can certainly request that those be put in a position that they're screened by what's ever out there, because obviously, and Ms. Laughlin, I think this goes back to one of your original comments with regard to the project was is there a way to kind of screen the meter bank from this? So I think that's always been the intention over there. It's just a question of making sure that's a reality.
So how do we make sure it is a reality?
So I think there's one of two ways to do it. One, we can always put a 6-foot fence up on that portion of the property line there to obscure that portion of the building and do wrap that edge around. That might be an option. The other is to also, as I think both Chairman Wynn and we suggested, push PSE&G or JCP&L or whomever the gas provider would be to put those at a height such that it's not going to interfere with or be visible from the roadway. But we'd be able to propose putting a 6-foot fence on that corner, I think, without an issue.
So 6-foot privacy fence, board on board, wood?
Yeah, I think that would make sense. That's fine. We could do something like that. I think if the intention is not to have something that's not really a screened chain link fence, if it wasn't existing and we're putting something new there, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we typically prefer to not use chain link fence in town.
Sure.
So usually board on board wood is what most folks select.
Okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Then yeah, I think that's something we can do as a condition, certainly.
Thank you.
And just so that I'm clear, that fence will run from the gate where it's shown on the plan now to the rear, to the limit of the concrete sidewalk?
It would basically run all the way up to the existing building edge. So it looks like it would just be slightly in front of that edge of concrete walk.
Right.
So where the adjacent building juts out at that point, exactly, right where the hand was.
Okay. And you're saying it will be a 6-foot high fence at that point, throughout, running from south to north.
Exactly.
Yep, that's correct.
Just a question, if you did get the corner properties agreement to run the fence from your property line to the edge of their building, the fence that we're talking about now may not be necessary at all.
That's certainly possible. Yeah. And if it is, maybe that's a different solution that again we can figure out, and if that's the solution, then maybe that eliminates the whole problem. But I think for purposes of us being able to control, being the big part of the issue here for site control and site safety, we'd prefer to keep everything contained on the property as much as we can.
And since we talked about 6-foot board-on-board fence, would you also then modify the gate to be a 6-foot high fence? Or sorry, 6-foot high fence gate?
Yes, correct.
I think that would probably make sense. Yep.
Thank you.
It'd be a bit strange, right? So
it would be, but just to be very clear.
Yep. No, I hear you. All right. So Sony, I think you've summarized really the two civil changes that were here. Provided the testimonies to the arborvitae and the fruit trees. Was there anything else? And I know you've had the benefit of reviewing the two letters. One for the one letter from Mr. Battaglia. Was there anything else in that letter that you wanted to address at this point?
No, I think it was straightforward. I think we can comply with the other changes, and there are no other issues.
Okay, great. Then that, Mr. Chairman, is all of our affirmative testimony.
All right, are there any more questions from the board?
I have something. I thought that Mr. Battaglia's letter made other references to things that were in the redevelopment agreement that you have not addressed. Like, for example, as I recall, something about public art. And there were a couple of items.
So then maybe what I should do here is just walk through a couple of these issues. Let me just open up I just closed the copy of the letter. Of course I did. Just pop it open here. One moment.
I mean, it would be best for Mr. Battaglia to talk to you about what he believes is still open from the letter that he wrote with his recommendations.
Yep, and Mr. Battaglia, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. I was on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Just so the record is clear, what we're talking about is Mr. Battaglia's December 2020 letter, which is marked A56.
That is correct.
So I believe what Ms. Loftman is referring to, we could start with number 11. According to the redevelopment plan, there's supposed to be a public art plan, which we did not see in the application package.
Okay, so the public art plan for this property, and actually, if you look at the public art provision in the redevelopment plan, the plaza that's there in front of the building is the public art plan. That's the component there, and its intention, as I think Mr. Stevie had testified to, was to really have that as kind of an open space to engage across the building boundaries and across the property boundaries. So yeah, that's the satisfaction.
Okay, and then on to the next comment I had was there is no, again, according to the redevelopment plan, there's supposed to be a construction staging plan. We're probably a little early for that, but I wanted to point out that it wasn't included.
Right, and that's something we can provide as a condition of approval, obviously, to see how that would all work.
And then if we could bounce back up, sorry, I think I've got them all in the same spot. So if we're at number 10,
yep.
Pedestrian connection to the former Haynes site. Don't see any kind of connection.
Right. And
I think when we took a look at this, I think ultimately that the safest route to connect, I think the two sites really would be having the crosswalk where it should be at the intersection where it's controlled and allows safe passage for pedestrians, along that path versus a mid-block, crossing a nature some that.
I would tend to agree. I just wanted to make sure it was on the record.
Yep.
And I believe the last one going up to number 9 was the redevelopment plan talks about bump outs. However, there aren't any provided. So can you just speak to that?
I think similarly, that's probably the same argument related to the plaza area, allowing for the use of tables, chairs, and things like that. That would essentially allow for, the same amenities that were provided with bump outs and other areas like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
I think that was all of them, and I just heard you testify that you would be complying with all the other comments. So,
Yep.
Correct.
thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, I do have a couple more. With respect to the wooden fence, it almost looks like from CS 502 that there's gaps in the fence. Is that accurate?
No, that's not the intention. There would be completely a closed type of fence, so that that does allow that complete blocking and screening from the headlights. So that's not the intention. It would be a closed system. If there are notches shown as it's currently is, the entirety of it would be blocking the entire view from any cars or headlights coming out of the garage exit.
Okay. And I just had a question. I mean, 4 feet seems a little short. If I remember back to one of the renderings where you kind of see the church property a little bit higher up than this property. I'm just wondering if maybe a 6-foot fence would be more appropriate to screen out the light.
You know what? I think given the fact that we're doing 6 foot along the other edge at this point, it probably makes sense to just go with everything with 6 foot. So yeah, I think that should work out, and we can make that change.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the retaining wall that's in the rear of the property, the very northern portion of the property, and it has a 4-foot high chain link fence on it?
Correct. If we can just zoom in on that portion of it.
I guess my real question is that code compliant, depending on the height of that wall?
It actually is. So we took a closer look at that. Ultimately, what you have is a overall wall height that's less than 3 feet. In addition to the 4-foot high, we are just under 7 feet tall for the entirety of that structure, as well as the fencing.
Okay. And so just to revisit, the purpose of that door at this point is now maintenance and not so much access to the neighboring restaurant?
That's correct.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So does that negate the need for lighting back there, or very specific lighting for that doorway?
Correct. I could let Bruce discuss that a little bit more in detail, but my understanding is that would be just emergency lighting at the actual, just right above the door.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Robin.
Okay, thank you, Chair Nguyen. I'm not quite sure. I had asked this a couple of meetings ago, and somebody was going to get back to us. Is there in the plaza area for seating, for public seating in the public plaza? Will there be seating provided by the building, the developer, or is it going to be seating that's provided by whatever stores or coffee shop or restaurant that's there?
On the landscape plan, we do show cafe tables, benches, and other things like that are proposed as part of the overall development. So there is seating available and will be provided as part of the plan. We do also show details for that in the detail sheets.
Okay, so the cafe tables, are they open to the public, or do you have to purchase something somewhere to sit down, or anybody could sit and have a respite, or like it's public? It's a public plaza.
Yeah. So go ahead, Tony.
I was going to say correct. I mean, you have public entities who are parking in the garage as well as using the retail spaces, and so they would be welcome to using the seating and other things like that as well within that space, because they would be essentially walking from the garage to that space. So if they want to sit down, they certainly could.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from the board?
Yes, I do have one more question. Is this building going to have a name? So you'll call it like the Church Street Plaza or something? Is there something that you're going to identify these with a name? Just something to think about, really, because it would be nice to name the plaza something or other
Yeah,
to identify it.
it's certainly a great idea. It hasn't been chosen yet. It will be, but that's something management hasn't really delved into yet. And having done a few buildings like these, I know the name is something that comes through a very meticulous process as part of the marketing scheme. So that's something that I know they'll pay very close attention to and likely work with the township very closely on as well.
You'd also kind of just piggybacking on Robin's comment, giving it a name and calling it a plaza makes it really confirms that it's public space. You know, anybody can go and sit there, no matter whose chairs are out there, even if they're belonging to a restaurant, whatever. Okay, thank you.
Is that pavement board PDF that we saw flashed briefly, is that relevant to this application?
So I think somebody had actually mentioned at one point wanted to see a sample of what kind of texture we were talking about with the stamped concrete that was going there, and this is the kind of pavement that'll be going in there.
It's not slippery, is it?
Sony?
It is not. So I think just the look and finish make it probably look like that, but it certainly is not. It's an integrally colored, meaning like if you did chip it, it would still have the same color throughout the entirety of the concrete. And then also it's a stamped look, so it has a stamped finished look as well. And so it does have a texture to it and a grip to it as well. And so if you had some type of finish to that, you could have something that was with a bit of grit as well to allow for grip when people are walking along it.
But if you have stiletto heels on it, they're going to get stuck in the cracks there, right?
The cracks are actually only about pretty shallow, I would say. So they're not like your typical cracks. I would say this would be similar to like a paver style, walkway or something like that as well.
Just for the record, I marked this as Exhibit A59.
Oh, thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
And this was prepared by your office, Sonny?
That's correct.
Sony, are those individual blocks or are those poured in concrete?
This is poured concrete. So essentially the finish that you're seeing on the surface is essentially a stamp. And so that's why those joints that seem and make it look as if it's individual pieces are actually pretty shallow, but they make up one large concrete pour, and then the stamped finish goes on the surface.
Do they apply the stamp finish, or is it scored into the concrete before it hardens?
They basically have this this mold that gets applied to the surface before it hardens, and they go throughout the entirety of it doing that, and then it hardens with this type of look and finish.
Uh-huh.
Great. So Sony, I think that's well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, we'll kick it back to you.
So are there other questions from the board? This witness? I have one further question that I'm not quite certain on here, and if we could revisit it, we touched briefly about the public park, and you said it was the plaza. And does the plaza meet the requirement?
Hang on a sec, Mr. Chairman, you're breaking up. I think you're asking about the how does the public art requirement being met by the plaza? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So let me open up my copy of the plan here and flip to it here, just so we address this properly. This is page 28 of the plan. Yep. So the redevelopment plan shall include a public art component consisting of one of the following elements in each project. Either incorporation of art representations within the design of the deck facades, fencing, or railings, provision of an area for the placement of statutory or other art displays and rotating exhibits, or sidewalk areas or small plazas for street performances or other similar entertainment. We'd propose that this could be in that third category. a plaza for performances or other similar entertainment that could be had.
So so the developer is going to be allowing performances and other activities to go on in this area besides just sitting.
I think we're required to, yes.
And that would be below people's apartments, musical events and.
Well, depending on what the nature of those street performances might be, yeah, I mean it could be. Obviously we'd work with, building management would work closely with whomever those folks are, and make everyone aware of the fact that these are going on. But it certainly wouldn't be something.
Right.
Say that again.
They're just mimes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Mimes only. No, and it may be, Saturday afternoons, I don't want to speak for anyone who may have a better idea than me in the future, but I like mimes, so there you go.
Quick question on how that would be scheduled. I know for the Seymour Street project, the township has the actual scheduling on the open space performances and whatever happens in the plaza area, meaning the significant area. The township has the opportunity to obviously work with our local, performing arts groups to decide if we want to use the scheduling. If the township then does not have an item to schedule for a specific date, we then turn it back over to the property management entity to decide if they want to do something. Is that what you foresee as something along these lines, where the township would be the one that would be looking for first to determine what is scheduled in terms of it being public or not?
So that's one where I've got to tip the hat to Dave Gaber, who's with Bijou. But yes, that's the nature of what we'd be talking about is giving the township and working closely with the township to schedule all those kinds of events, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think that would be just a key piece to look exactly how that is framed. That was one of the key components in the other project, that in order to make it truly public, that it was where the township was looking at it to determine what public uses would be in that space, and then barring that, again, it would then transfer over to determine how you would want to program it to make sure that you have it filled as you chose. But that way, it stops it being precluded from various use and turns it into a more open space. So just to note.
Right. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I don't think we have any more questions.
John, I'm sorry, I actually do. I have two more questions if you indulge me. And they both relate to Mr. Battaglia's report. I'm not quite clear on number 3 on the possibility of a waiver for length of the, and I may have missed that testimony earlier, so my apologies if I did. But,
yeah, sorry. I was going to say Mr. Stevie did put in some testimony about the consistency of these, the length and width of the spaces with urban design requirements, and that these are appropriate for the building.
I thought I heard that, but Mr. Battaglia's letter suggests that a waiver for length and possibly width was. Ms. McLeod, do you think there is a waiver necessary based on the testimony?
So I don't really. The nature of the requirement, I think, is first, I think the nature of the redevelopment plan is one that supersedes to the extent necessary. Now, the plan, I don't believe, talks about the specific width of a parking space there, but to the extent that a waiver would be necessary, I do note that the 9x19 standard, I think, is pretty consistent with, if not exactly consistent with, the RSIS standards, and so we would request a waiver from either RSIS or the township standard, whichever one were to apply, in order to make sure we're there. Sorry,
Mr. McLeod, because this is a mixed-use building, I anticipate that the township's requirements are applicable. And the township's requirements are, 9x19. We do allow for reductions for for compact car use, but what's shown on the plan are spaces that are only 8 feet wide, and Mr. Stevie testified to the spaces being 8.5 feet wide. So I think there's a big difference between 8.5 feet and 8 feet.
No, so let me clarify Mr. Stevie's testimony. All the spaces that are generally available are 8.5 feet wide. So to the extent that standard applies, I think a waiver for width would be necessary, and Mr. Stevie's testified on that front. The waiver for length would be necessary to allow the 18-foot depth as opposed to the 19-foot depth. And then for the small car spaces that are marked, those are dimensioned to 8 foot by 16 foot, and obviously would require the appropriate signage to be compliant. So I believe we do need that waiver for the 8.5 feet.
Right, and I do recall there were the spaces that were on the public level, the first level, the ground floor level, were only 8 feet wide.
Those are. Sorry, Bruce. Do you want to clarify that?
Yes. All of the regular parking spaces in the parking garage are 8'6" by 18 feet with a wheel stop. And the compact spaces, and there's a total of 14 compact spaces, 4 on the upper level and 14 on the lower level. Those are 8 feet by 16 feet.
And that's not, and I believe that our redevelopment plan, not our redevelopment, I'm sorry, our site plan standards require, allow the compact to go to 8.5 by 17, not 16.
So if I'm reading Mr. Battaglia's letter, he suggests that spaces reserved for small cars defined as 16 foot or less in length must be delineated. I think in either case, if there's a waiver necessary there, we'd request it.
I think you need a waiver.
Okay, then certainly we'd request it. And Bruce, I think the testimony remains the same, correct?
Yes, and we'll provide the required signage that he's asking for and striping.
I could just jump in. My understanding was that a waiver was only required for the regular spaces.
Right.
That the compact spaces meet the code.
But they don't.
They don't.
My reading of the code was that for compact spaces, 8 by 16 was okay.
I have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, in either event, in the instance of clarity for the record, should a waiver be necessary, we'd request it. If one isn't, we obviously don't.
Well, while Janice is looking up that part of the code, I'd also like to turn to number 6 in Mr. Battaglia's letter about the nature of the wall-mounted signage. I don't recall hearing any testimony about the nature of the signage that's going to be on the building. And I was wondering if that could be provided.
Yeah. So we will need to provide a wall-mounted stop signs, any sort of directional signs, control signs, and then also we will probably have a electrical vehicle charging station sign, and we will have the handicap parking space sign.
Right.
And echoing back to. Sorry.
So don't we typically get those details as part of the site plan package?
There are some of those on the site plan package, but they're I think that they're asking for a compact space sign, so we'll need to add that to the drawings. And then now that we're moving the electrical vehicle charging station upstairs, we'll want to put a sign on that, so we'll need to add that detail to the drawings. The basic package is there. It's just these enhanced signs that we need to add.
So there's not going to be, for example, a monument sign out front to getting back to Parnell's notion of entitling the building. And there's not going to be any signage on the facades either, correct?
Just the signage that's indicated on the elevation drawings at this point in time, yes.
Okay.
And don't forget to submit a signage plan. And Janice, isn't that a requirement?
Yes. They could submit a master signage plan at a date when they have a tenant.
Right.
And then submit a master sign, or they're tenants. They could submit a master signage plan for the whole building.
Right.
We have described the basic areas, locations, and type of signage, but then there will have to be a final sign application made for the tenant.
Right, and there's no application here for any kind of variances from our standard signage provision.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
So I think when you do have your signage details, you would submit a master signage plan, and that would go to our development review committee for approval. Or it could go to the revisions committee, whichever you want.
Right.
Just for the record, I did double check our parking requirements, and our code requires that the spaces be 8 feet by 17 feet for compact cars. So the requirements it's a 17-foot depth. The anticipation is that the compact cars should be 16 feet or less in size, but the requirement is still 17 feet.
That is correct. I looked it up as well.
Then
My mistake.
I think Arthur, that answers our question, and we hereby request the waiver.
I always like my questions answered, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
So
speaking of your questions, did you have others? I'm sorry.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, are there any questions of any of the three witnesses that we've heard this evening so far? Are there any questions from the public of these witnesses concerning what they've testified to? Janice, you're going to unmute the public. Hopefully. Yes, I'm unmuting them right now. Okay. They don't all have, it doesn't, I don't know if they have their audio connected. So I'm trying to unmute all of you.
I think one of the challenges might be, and I found this out earlier tonight when I was having my own computer gremlins, is that when you're an attendee, you can't connect the audio. You can only hear the audio broadcast. But once you get moved up to either a participant, as we are here on the board, and some of the presenters you've heard, and perhaps even when Ms. Talley unmutes you, you have the opportunity to connect in your audio. And it looks like Ms. Schrager has done that.
Thank you.
Yes, I've unmuted Ms. Schrager.
Great, thank you. So first, I'd like to thank the Planning Board for all your tireless efforts on behalf of the community, and the architectural firm as well for supplying so much detail about the plans. I'd like to start by saying that I have a question. We spent a lot of time about the front and the sides, not much time on the back. The back portion, so if I'm standing at Bloomfield Avenue and I'm looking at the back of the building, one thing that was discussed at, I believe it was the last meeting, was that there was going to be a rendering of what it looked like from Bloomfield Avenue, looking at the building, going farther north along Bloomfield Avenue, and I did not see that. And
there was a rendering presented that showed the building from Bloomfield Avenue, from I believe Valley, South, Valley.
Right. I'm familiar. Sorry, go ahead.
And also on Park Street, that we did go around all three sides. That was presented at the last meeting. And Janice, I don't think that you had it on your deck that the applicant had it.
I'm specifically talking about the location adjacent to 570 Bloomfield Avenue. I am not aware if there was a meeting in between the one I was at and this current meeting. I did not know about it, unfortunately, but I believe there was supposed to be a rendering of the back of the building so that we could see in between this Bloomfield Avenue area in the back of the building what exactly was going to be taking place. I'm particularly concerned about the back of 570 Bloomfield Avenue.
And what's located at 570?
An apartment building.
So,
Apartment building and retail.
what's the retail?
Montclair Nails.
Montclair Nails, okay. So the applicant, you presented a, I don't want to call it a 360, but that's what we originally asked it for. But you did present one that went around and showed various views of the building, correct?
Yes, we did. We had it was basically a walk around the block, showing the building.
Can you re-show that?
Yeah, Janice has that from the last meeting.
Thank you. And while you're pulling that up, part of the same question has to do with, you talked about arborvitae's on the side.
Hold on. So, do you want me to pull the movie from the previous meeting?
Yeah, I think it was presented as a movie. I know it was animated.
Okay, so what I'll do is, because I'm going to have to close down all these exhibits and then pull up the movie because it does require a lot of memory. So let's go through the rest of the public's questions, and then I'm going to close down these exhibits and then pull up the movie, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and a part of that is you talked about arborvitae's on the north side of the building where the church is. I didn't know what type of landscaping was going to be done in the back, but I assume that will be shown when you can see the 360. The other, and I'll go through my questions, I guess, so that you'll have everything, you can answer that. I recall you talking about roof condensers. I'm just wondering where on the roof those are located and how noisy they would be, if you could give me a sense of that.
The roof condensers are located in the center of the roof.
Okay.
And they have a screening that goes around them that helps to minimize the sound, the impact of the sound.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. And then I thought you said at the beginning of the meeting that there was auxiliary trash collection. Is the trash only in the middle where it's shown? Sort of in the middle of the, I guess, parking area? Or is there other places where the trash is going to be located? Or where it's collected?
The trash will only be stored in the trash room within the building.
Okay, great. And that's where it'll be collected from?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roof condensers, what?
Landscaping.
And the landscaping on the back, but we'll go over that as well, I assume.
Sony, do you have any information on the landscaping?
Yep. So what I could do is if we want to go to the landscape plan, I can describe the landscaping around the perimeter of it. It's drawing LP 101.
Great, thank you. And the other thing is what kind of lighting is going to be in the back? Because these are apartments that are facing the structure. And depending upon what kind of lighting there is, it could be disruptive to the tenants.
There are no lightings proposed in the back. It's only really for the plaza area, for the sidewalks on the frontage and along the driveway as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I thought you said there was emergency lighting at the gate in the rear, Sony.
It's emergency lighting above the doorway location. And Bruce, you could speak to how that's not on all the time and how that functions.
Right. That's basically it's a motion sensor light fixture that if there's any activity at that doorway, it would turn on. And it really only lights up the area right outside the door.
So that's in the back, northwest corner?
Northeast. Northeast.
Northeast.
Far east. Yep.
Northeast. Okay, so Church Street. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So,
Bruce, do you have any study from the decibel level that will get kicked off from the condensers on the roof?
Arthur,
Decibels?
you broke up there, but I think what you're asking about, have we done any study to see what the noise production is going to be with the condensers on the roof?
Yeah, apropos of Ms. Schrader's question, is the decibel level as you move further away from the roof? You said that there's going to be screening, obviously, but I was just curious if you knew what the decibel level would be and how it would, what the gradient would be as you move further away.
I don't know that I could answer that question.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So the screening, is that going to be the maximum available dampening screening? If there were a spectrum of screening available, we would want it to be the maximum dampening screening. Does that make sense?
This is a mechanical screening that is a typical mechanical screen that would be used around an air conditioning condensing grouping.
Aren't there different levels or qualities of screening that would, one would have a better dampening effect than another?
There may be, but again, this is a system that we use consistently in buildings of this type in locations similar to this.
Yeah, and Bruce, actually, let me jump in there only because I think it's worth characterizing it in the context of the building overall. The condensers are going to be adjacent to the rooftop area, so certainly it's in the applicant's interest to maximize the amount of noise reduction that occurs up there, if only because it would interfere with the residents' ability to enjoy that roof deck. So certainly we'll be using, the best available in order to do that, to maximize the use and availability of that roof deck. Ms. Schrager, I hope that answers in part your question.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate
And then Sony, I see the landscape plans open here. Do you want to take Ms. Schrager just through that on the northwest corner?
Sure. So along the northwestern edge that's facing the church, that's the edge that is going to provide the arborvitaes. So that the planting has gone from a lower level planting to a higher level planting with arborvitaes along that one edge. As you kind of wrap around the building, you asked what planting was going to be along the back edge as well as the eastern side, and that's going to be essentially ground cover. So it's just finding that balance of planting that's going to thrive within an area that has more shade than other areas. And so what we proposed here is a ground cover planting that's going to be low lying.
Is it possible to have some other types of greenery that would be less than ground cover that can better thrive in the shade?
So this was actually a type of planting that is suitable within this type of shaded environment. If we had anything else higher, it would be difficult to have maintenance or access come through. And if we had anything lower, it would essentially just be a type of grass, and that wouldn't do as well within a shaded environment such as this.
Okay. How high is the wall in the back for the, one of my thoughts over in that corner, there's some parking over there. So when cars pull in, are there, and at nighttime, are there lights going to be blocked by a wall, or is the lighting of the car going to be over the wall? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the lights will be concealed behind a wall.
Yeah.
You won't be able to see the cars at all.
Right.
Oh, that's
Yeah, there's a 6-foot board-on-board fence being proposed over there.
Okay, very good.
And I think that's, I think we hit everything. So.
If you could just give me a moment, I'll pull up the movie.
Great, thanks, Janice.
And if you could let me know what exhibit number that is, Janice, I'd appreciate it.
You mean the movie?
Yeah.
That was from the last meeting, so let me.
I'll grab it, Janice. You stick with those. I think it's A48, Arthur.
You're absolutely right. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, we'll see.
So Janice, is there money in the budget to buy you a new laptop next year?
You know, I think this is a new laptop. Sometimes all these files are so big. You need,
Yes,
I
you
think,
need
more.
more RAM or something.
Look at the size of this document. So I'm trying to get it running.
It's a full gigabyte. This is no small little guy. So.
But there we go. Just have to be patient. And now it'll start and stop because it's the buffering. It's loading up the video. There we go. With Schrager, we'll get there eventually.
Bruce, the next one of these you do, make sure you put music to it.
Ms. Schrager, did that give you the perspective you were looking for? I see, Ms. Schrager, you put out added a chat notice that you can't see the back of the building from the residents' perspective. No, this was not the elevations are really from the public point of, from the roads. The elevations were not provided, or renderings provided what they would look like from the backs of the adjacent buildings. Is that correct, Bruce?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think I'm going to stop the video, the movie for now. I think we've seen what we've already seen it once. Okay.
Are there any colorized elevations that might help?
I don't think there are any along that side of the building. That would certainly show that would certainly show the. I guess, Ms. Schrager, are you looking at? So if you're in 570, looking at the building, what you would see, or if you're standing at the building, what you would see looking at 570.
And I think Ms. Schrager, there she goes.
Ms. Schrager, I needed you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, I'm concerned about the residents and what they will be looking at, either in their apartments or in the backyard. The last thing I wanted to do is impact their quality of living.
And just so I'm clear, which residents are you talking about? That's what I'm wondering is, are you talking about the residents in this building looking at 570, or the folks in 570 looking at this building?
Residents of 570.
Okay. So what I can say is, I believe the way the building's actually laid out, the furthest setback that exists on the building is on the corner that is adjacent to 570. If just my figuring out where the house or where the property is versus where you are is right. If you're on that northwest corner, that's the furthest setback that exists. on the property. So there's certainly a substantial amount of space between where the building is and where that setback line is, if I remember where your building is. And then, as to what you'd see on that corner, Bruce, can you briefly describe just what's on the northwest corner of the building and kind of give them a sense of
Sure. There's one floor of the building is the parking facility, which is totally enclosed and not visible from your property. On top of that, the building sets back about 15 feet, I think it is, or 20 feet from the building to the units above. So there is actually there's a setback. And so you'll be looking across that setback towards the church.
Yep.
And then from there over, it will be a residential building that is set back slightly from the parking level, but
Is it possible to get a rough rendering of that? Just so I feel a little more comfortable.
1 minute.
Well, if you go to the
building elevation,
I was going to say, you have to look at a couple of things in combination. I think you have to look at, from the site plan standpoint, if you pull up the first page of the latest site plan that has the aerial view that shows you the properties along Bloomfield Avenue and the layout of this building, that'll give you the approximate, give you a better perspective of the distances.
Oh, that's great.
And the rendering that you have of the building Bloomfield Avenue, I mean, basically it's going to look like those materials, stucco materials to the ground, So that's the basic pattern that's going to be along that side of the building. On the latest packet, if you pull up the site plan, the first page of it has the aerial view, and it has all the properties on Bloomfield Avenue set out. And it looks like there's a pretty good distance between where the building is actually sitting and where the 570 property is.
That would be great. I don't have access to that right now. If it's possible to just put on the screen quickly, I would appreciate that.
I think Janice is trying to pull it up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And Chairman, are you referring to the CS 101 site plan for the architect?
I'm looking at what was in the December packet and the preliminary and final site plan, and it's C1 cover.
Okay.
And it's the cover sheet.
That's the site plan, not the architectural drawings. Okay.
Site plan, right.
Right. Yep.
So, C1.
I think it's CS 101 maybe.
There's CS 101.
Sony, was there a cover sheet over the site plan set?
What it basically on the website, it just says site plan.
Okay.
And a date.
Yeah.
So
I think each one of these are the broken out.
Yeah, I don't have the full site plan.
So if you go up to the,
I think it might be the November meeting we have it too. Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be part of the exhibits someplace. But if you can go up to the website, the town website.
I can.
It's in the November, the 1109 submission. You can look at that one.
All right, I can get that from. It's probably faster if I get that on my computer.
If you look in the 1109, there is a site plan in that.
Right, I'm going to do the 11th. Yeah, the presentation for tonight was just the revised sheets. So, okay. I have Langen exhibits, updated plans.
It just said views from 570.
No, I just want,
Oh.
which ones are, Sony, which are yours and which are the architectural drawings?
So it says number 6. It says Church-Langen exhibits, but the plans that I'm looking at are the same ones. I mean, I'm pulling it up as well on my end, and I just see the survey and the CS 101. I'm not sure if the other one that you're talking about may be an architectural site
Probably
plan.
is. The cover plan for the architectural set.
Right
Yeah,
above
I think that's the case.
in exhibits, it says 570 Bloomfield. That's the product building we're talking about. So I'm not sure what that would be.
What is that? Yeah, what is that exhibit? It says views from 570.
So those are views from 570, but they were never entered in as exhibits from the last hearing. When we presented everything last hearing, they looked at the at the fly around and nobody asked any questions. So we do have views from 570. I didn't know you still had those available.
That's great.
So if you open those, we are going to have to enter them in as exhibits.
I actually already did. That's like that because you submitted it. That's A47.
Okay.
Even though you didn't present it, you submitted it. So this is what I have. Okay.
All right.
So this is looking out the window of 570 Bloomfield.
Is that what floor is that?
From the looks of it, it appears that we're at about you have a three-story building there.
Mm-hmm. So the other
3 stories.
From the top floor?
A wall. Right?
So you're looking.
They're all apartments on the bottom. They're apartments all along the back.
Second, third floors.
The second and third floors. So the second floor is probably looking all that. Yep. If this is a third floor, then we're looking at the setback, and then the second floor would be looking at the wall, I guess.
Well, the second floor would be looking across the setback, and then the first floor would be looking at the wall.
Yep.
Okay.
Does that help?
There we go. That might actually help you. And here, actually, Ms. Schrager, you can see the distance of that setback too from the building to the building that's proposed.
Oh,
I think you see the second floor there is actually looking across the top of that, the jut out there for the parking level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize we still have these in here. So good.
Yeah, you probably did this after I had the question the first time.
We probably did, and I spaced completely when you weren't at the next meeting. So sorry for that.
I think we were prepared, but then it didn't get raised.
So so that's the second. So yeah, the second and third, you've got a pretty substantial setback from where your building is to where the building's proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I'm looking at, I think it's about 30 feet to the property line, and then there's an additional 5 feet in the back to the building. So about 35 feet from the building to the back of the proposed building. So that's quite a bit of space.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome.
Okay.
Other questions from the public?
There don't appear to be any other questions.
Okay. With that, then, I think we should hear from Barton and Ira with respect to anything that they would like to tell us concerning the architectural revisions. And we can go in alphabetical order. Take the chance out of it, the chance element out of it. So if Barton, you'd go first. I'm going by your first name, not your last name.
Very good. Chair Nguyen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I agreed with the earlier assessments of renderings. Obviously, renderings it's hard to see, and each rendering is kind of has different colors that show up, different shadow lines, and these were some issues Mr. Smith and I have already raised with the applicants. However, in general, we were happy with the beige colors. I think that I hope that's more palatable for the board. It's a little less modern looking and a little more contextual with the other buildings that surround the structure in the area. So, and when you look at it in context with the other buildings, I think it kind of fits in a little bit better, looking like it's always been there. And that was always my my advice to the applicants in the beginning, was to make the 3-story retail building kind of look like it's always been there, a little more organic. And then obviously you have the metal panels on the 5-story residential structure, which make it look a little more modern, but at least there's a dichotomy kind of between the two parts of the building. So I think the applicants have done a really good job following the redevelopment plan in that aspect. And then the details at the cornice line of the 5-story residential building, the metal panels, how they kind of go in and out, and there's recesses and much better shadow lines now. So I think that reads much better detail than earlier renditions of this. They've changed the actual mullions of the windows to kind of blend in better with this new color palette. So, Mr. Smith and I also reviewed that and helped them work with that. And I think that's come a long way. The bulkhead, they added some kind of belt coursing detail around the bulkhead. And I think that it looks a little more of the building and doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. So I think they've done a good job trying to resolve that. And on the Bloomfield Avenue side, I also brought up the issues of the vents and how exactly the vents would look, where they be located. Are they going to be metallic? Are they going to be the same color? So that's been one of my ongoing questions to the applicants is, how those HVAC vents will actually work in the end, and how the architects will mitigate its appearance so you won't really notice them when you look up at the building. And I think obviously on the Bloomfield Avenue side, it's come a long way with adding the same metal detailing as it wraps around the building, and also adding, kind of the detail in between the window fenestration to also match what's around on the Church Street facade. So it doesn't look like just a blank wall anymore. It has a lot more detail and shadow lines that it's created. So obviously the Bloomfield Avenue side, even though it's not directly on Bloomfield Avenue, I think it's come a long way, and they've added a lot of detail to that facade, which has been good. So those are basically my comments that we've been talking with the applicants about.
Okay, thank you, Barton. Does anybody have any questions for Barton? Okay. Thank you again. And Ira, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen. Is my audio working better tonight than last time?
I hear you fine.
Excellent.
So far, so good.
Great. Thank you, Chair Nguyen. Good evening, board members. I think there has been a convergence between myself and Barton and the applicant. So instead of repeating what Barton has said, I'll just add to it. Yeah, at the end of the last hearing, I believe I did express uncertainty about the direction of the finishes, feeling they were perhaps too modern, too stark for a design that's already interpretive modern. And I do think a palette's been found that is more inviting, more contextual. I had asked questions about the level of detail, so I can report the reveals in the metal panel I think will be very effective. These are the grooves that produce shadow lines, and they're a 1/2 inch wide by 3/4 inch deep, which is substantial for that kind of reveal. The cornice that Barton just referred to at the top of the metal panels has what I call kind of surface crenellation. Some of those metal panels pop out 2 inches, the ones that are recessed 3 inches, and the cap on top is 6 inches. So there's a full inch of overlap. Some of you might have seen a fine shadow line at the very top of that cornice. I think that kind of sculptural presence reproduces what we're used to seeing in a more traditional building, which is the sort of playing of light along a traditional cornice line. I think it's worth mentioning too that the materials which I had a chance to see earlier today, and you all should definitely see them. I agree 100% with Chair Wynn. It is a lighter, softer, warmer zinc that's being proposed. And although it was a subject of conversation briefly that I had with Bruce, he did not mention that color specifically, in addition to, I think, being part of the oeuvre of Marchetto Higgins Stevie. I think it's a great choice here because one of the prominent things you see in this area bound by the Unitarian Church, Christ Church, Wedgwood, the Sienna, is this sort of shapely roof of the Unitarian Church, which is all slate. And it has, depending on where you are, different kinds of color effects going on. And I think it's very interesting. It'll be kind of complementary in a good way, in contrast to the white to white relationship I referred to before, white building Unitarian, white 3-story element that we had before on this project. To have a roof form that's that shape, and then to have kind of a background element that's similar in tone, I think kind of creates a nice parity or relationship between those two properties. Those are the additional comments I have. Like I said, there's nothing like seeing the actual material. If you do, please make sure you bring it out into the light. And at the planning department, they have both the original slightly darker zinc as well as the whiter brick, in addition to this new palette. And I do endorse, I think Bruce and Dean are correct that this palette, it has a range that didn't exist in the prior brick. It has a change in texture as well from brick to brick. It's very hard to pick that up in photographs. So although I wish I could say you can take my word for it, I think this building is a great example of a particular style that, you know, you can't take my word for it. I encourage you to, but there's nothing like seeing the material itself.
Okay, thank you, Ira. Does anybody have any questions for Ira? Doesn't sound like it. I didn't ask Barton, and I should have, but I'll ask you, since you both seem to be on the same page. The cornice line around the other parts of the building, the Park Street side, the Bloomfield Avenue side, the Valley Road side, where the stucco is and such, the places that you can see above the street, but are not the main facades of the building. Is there enough of a line? Will there be enough of a line of going around that to keep this from looking like just a box, a stucco covered box with metal caps on the end?
We'll do the alphabet thing again. Barton, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, that was a concern of mine in the beginning too, John. And I think Bruce did a good job of trying to add a little bit of a thicker cap up there at the top, especially at the masonry facades. I think it looks much better than it did. You know, it's maybe not as traditional as I would have designed, but that's that's the look that they want to go for with this building. And I think it works in concert with the rest of the facades, the way it appears. And, it has kind of a modern contextual element to it, but he's added in enough of a detail that I think there's a reveal and a shadow line that goes on at the top of the building. The only other question I had was there's a railing at the metal facades. I don't know if Bruce could fill the board in on the purpose of that, which is not at the masonry facades.
And that metal railing is set back from the edge of the building. One of the things that we're, again, trying to do with the metal portion of the building to differentiate it from the masonry portion is that we lowered the height of that parapet going around. So while the parapet at the masonry portions of the building is at 4 feet, the parapet at the metal portions might be at 3 feet. So we need to provide a railing for fire safety, fireman safety. So again, that's a railing. It's set back significantly from the edge of the building, so it shouldn't be very visible if it's visible at all. And it'll be painted the same color as the metal material.
Yeah, I noticed the railing, and I didn't have a problem with it being a feature towards the for the metal covered parts. My concern was more towards the lesser sides of the building, making sure that they look good enough to be seen, and because this is where you're scrimping on the spend. You're using the cheaper materials. You're using, you don't have as much detail. You don't have as much oomph, but it still needs to look good. Because, particularly with the rendering on Bloomfield Avenue, with the gap between the where the new restaurant is, and there's the outdoor dining, and there's a one-story building. You get a really good look at this building, the back of this building, close to the corner of Park Street and Bloomfield Avenue. And we don't want it to be we don't want it to be an eyesore. We want it to be something that will be equally as appreciated as the main facades. Because it will be noticed, and it's further away, so you can get away with a little less detail because people won't be able to be right up on it. Their view of it is a little further away, but still it has to look good. So that's been my concern about this facade.
I appreciate that, but I do offer, it is my opinion, in the design of this building. And again, to the board's credit, we started with less detail and we've added more detail. And I think that the detailing around the building now is consistent on all facades. And I think that the level of detail that we're proposing in the stucco facades now is consistent with the level of detail that the brick facades are reflecting. And I think that one of the mandates of the redevelopment plan is that we think of this building as a building in the round, and I think that this is doing that now. And I feel confident in the design of the building and the idea of the detailing at the top of the building, and I think it will be a good neighbor and a handsome building in your downtown.
All right. Are there any other questions of the architects from the board? Okay, there doesn't appear to be. Counselor, what else do you have for us?
That's the whole song and dance, Mr. Chairman. I can give a bit of a summary if you like.
Well, let me open it up to the public first.
Sure.
To see if the public has any final comments that they'd like to be heard on concerning the application.
Okay, I've opened up the public and there don't appear to be any comments.
Okay. All right, well, if there are no comments from the public, then council, you can proceed to give us a wrap up if you like.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I would like one other last quick comment on our end.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I just want to note and pose, I know that there was discussion previously about the garage itself and the time that it would be closing. And I know a lot of the discussion centered around it being closed at 12 a.m. Looking at our ordinances that we have in town, barring overnight, when they kick into effect, the hours that is around 3 a.m., et cetera. While we're in the dynamic we are now, we're all aware of businesses and the challenges they face. But hopefully, once we get back to the new normal, there will be, oftentimes many people out and enjoying themselves in town pretty late into the night. How was it that you came up with a 12 a.m. time as opposed to something a little bit later in terms of when the garage would be closed to the public?
So coming up with that was rather, to be frank, rather arbitrary. The 12 midnight cutoff, I think, was a proposal on our part to say, what's a reasonable hour at which you say, the garage needs to kind of close up shop. Thinking of residential timing and everything like that. That being said, we're happy to increase the hours, particularly on weekends, recognizing the folks will be out a bit later. If that's something that's in the board's interest and in the town's interest, we're certainly happy to do it. I think we put that out there.
I certainly would offer that perspective as you offer it there. Again, even in my earlier comments, just looking at things that maximize the public benefit piece. And, when we talk about public parking and public spaces, and I get the counter desire, what you have in terms of an opportunity to close it for some period. But, again, the more restrictive that is, the less it's a more usable public benefit. So just along those lines, looking at options to potentially expand that time frame, I think would be something I certainly would like to see. But again, part of a broader consideration.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can consider, Mr. Mayor. If there's a need to keep, I guess the only concern would be, you can always get out of the deck. I think is probably how it'll function. It's just a question of how late we want to keep people having the ability to come in without the gates coming up. But certainly if increasing those hours is something that the board's interested in seeing, happy to do that as a condition of approval and modify the parking management plan accordingly.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think actually Bruce did a great job of kind of summarizing where we were and where we came to the board with a plan that matched with a design that matched the plan and a plan that matched the design. And all of these, were kind of custom fitted, and then it gets into the iterative process that is coming before the board. And I really do have to say thank you to the board, its professionals, for giving us so much of their time and working with our professionals on kind of designing, redesigning, winnowing, and perfecting the building that you now see before you. And this building is one that's been in the works for a number of years. It's one where you've got a dedicated owner who's dedicated to bringing a high quality product to Montclair, and one that they're excited to share with Montclair. I think you've seen through the renderings that have been put together and the concision with which those have been developed that there's certainly a commitment to a high quality end product here. Not least of which because it does put the stamp of all of our professionals and the developer itself out there, and it's something where we're not looking at this as a shot in the dark, but instead something that's going to continue to persist and become a part of Montclair for quite a sizable amount of time. What we'd ask tonight is, as we did in the original, ask for the approval of both preliminary and final site plan for this development. And given that it's fully consistent with the goals, objectives, and intentions of the redevelopment plan. And we thank the board for its time and would ask that vote go forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. So with that, members of the board, it's The testimony is closed, and it's now on us to make a decision. Would anyone like to be heard? Ms. Willis?
Well, I didn't necessarily want to be heard, but I'm in support of the application.
Okay. I said you because your name popped up.
Yeah, I muted myself in case it was time for someone to talk to me, so thank you.
Timing is everything, right? Anyone else? Well, since nobody's rushing to speak, I'll add my 2 cents here. And I am generally in favor of the project. I agree that it has come quite a ways since what we saw initially. The concept was initially a bit intimidating towards me, but it's grown on me. And I do think that it can be a good fit in this area. My concerns have been with the building itself and the finishes and how it blends in to the surrounding community, because I think that's something that for something of this size and that we need to be very careful about what we approve in terms of its finishes, because it can make or break the impact of the building. I am comforted by the fact that our board architects, have been working closely with the applicant and are in a good place with respect to the design and the materials. I still need to see the actual materials that they're proposing, the new materials, to see. I thought I had a very clear conception of how the other materials would look with respect to the environment that we're putting them in, and with the changes to the brick and the metal panels and the finishes on the stucco. I'm not so sure anymore. I've been considering that during the course of the hearing and the testimony. And I don't think that my reservations are such that I would hold up making a motion to approve this, but I would definitely have to condition it on there being some review of the finishes, by committee, which we've done in the past. And I do think that the overall design presents a good transition between, what we have established on Church Street and what exists as we head to the west. And so I would be in favor of approving this and would make a motion that we do so with conditions, which we have discussed, generally concerning the parking and plaza and fencing. I believe Arthur has been keeping a list of various things that we've discussed, so we can flesh that out. But that's my take on this, and I will make the motion now to approve the application with conditions.
Would you like me to go through the conditions that I've noted, subject to, obviously, the board may have additional ones?
Yes, let's do that.
But do you think we should vote first and then do that, or no?
Well, this is what we're voting on. It's, the various conditions. I mean, there might be, and it still has to be second. So.
But we're assuming that everybody will be approving the building. Is that?
No.
No. Okay.
This is just fleshing out the motion.
Okay.
Right.
Because it's a motion with conditions, and we don't have that many conditions, so we might as well just flesh them.
Oh, I beg to differ with you, John.
I know. That's what I thought.
No, I don't have that many.
We've had a lot more on other occasions, but go ahead.
One of the conditions I had related to the garage door noise has to be mitigated. And I know there was testimony about the fact that there was a slab right there for the residents above the garage door, but I left it in as a condition. The board can just tell me yay or nay on that. Another condition is that the applicant will provide a 6-foot privacy fence on both the east side and the west side of the property, and will increase the height of the gates to 6 feet. Right now they're shown as 4 feet on the plan. The applicant shall comply with the SCE letter from Mr. Battaglia, and specifically, in addition to that, there will be the submission of a construction staging plan. The township, to the extent I understood what the mayor was trying to get at with programming on the site, the township will have the first option on the open space. That's how I recorded it in my notes. And Mr. Mayor, if that's at variance with your understanding or what you were trying to express, I apologize, and please let me know. The applicant is requesting waivers with regard to the parking size, the space parking, and I will work I'll work those waivers out with Mr. McLeod. The applicant shall submit a master signage plan to either the DRC or the board's revisions committee when a tenant comes on board. The applicant will expand the hours that the garage is open to the public from what has been currently testified to. And the last condition I have is that the finishes for the building are to be reviewed by the board's revisions committee. And those are them.
All right. We also have agreement to all of the conditions as testified to by the board engineer. Will be satisfied.
Yes, Battaglia.
And that we also agreed at the beginning of this hearing that the handicap parking space will be switched from how it's depicted on the drawings that have been submitted so far. And drawings have to be revised, of course. And there are the other standard conditions that we put on all of our resolutions.
Right, and McLeod, these are not onerous. These are just the normal compliance and that kind of thing. And I will, as is my practice, I will share the resolution with you before submitting it to the board so that there are no questions, issues, or ambiguities.
Thank you, sir. I have just one question, only because of my ignorance with regard to the revisions committee, that being a very Montclair specific mechanism. How does it
work?
Well, how does it work? And I think that part of things I understand. I've actually talked to Mr. Neese about that. I'm wondering if the professionals are involved in that as well, or if there's a mechanism to confirm their input, because I know we've worked very closely with Aaron and Barton and want to make sure that their voices are heard as part of that process too. And I just don't know if there's a way to make sure that that occurs.
Well, we try and keep it as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible. And if we can do it, without taking up more of their time, we will.
Understood.
If it becomes a situation where we feel that we really need to go to them, to talk to them more, we can ways that we can do it, because the committee, and especially now with not having in-person meetings, all of this is going to be occurring a little bit differently than it normally occurs anyway. But as I said, basically we try and keep it as direct as possible, and as simple as possible, and so that it doesn't become overly burdensome to the board or the applicant.
Much appreciated.
And if we can't, come to an accord between the applicant and the committee, then it has to come back to the board.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think just, it might be worth and just a consideration that for any of the architectural, issues of review. So, and I think that's really what's for the revisions committee. It might be worth just, pinging it off of them, or maybe that's just something we do informally as part of that process, since I know they've both been so involved.
It depends, but we do work with, and so that's the.
Just wondering. Perfect. Thanks.
No problem. So that's the motion.
I had a question though. I'm not sure it was resolved about whether the affordable units will have the cost for parking included in their rent, or is that outside of the rental cost to the affordable units? I don't think that question was answered, and I'm sorry it didn't occur to me before now.
That's all right. I'd actually answered this in a response to Ms. Talley's letter, and everyone will have the option of parking, but it's not included within the rent.
So they'll be assigned a parking spot, but
no,
they'll
have an option to secure a parking spot. There will not be parking spaces assigned with every unit.
And at market rate rents for the affordable units.
That's the requirements actually under UHAC, is that anything above and beyond the rent has to come at full market.
Okay. Any other?
Do you need a second on your motion?
Yes, that's where we're at right now. Motion's been made. Does anyone second?
Well,
Just for clarity on that too.
I will second your motion.
Did it also include, I heard all the specifications there, that it should at least be noted that there would be exit from the parking deck at all hours and a consideration to a later, a broader period of open to the public? So I'm not sure if you had said that and I missed it, but.
Yeah, that was part of the conditions that our attorney addressed, and he also said that he wanted to talk to you to make it clear how it was to be communicated. So he didn't do a good job of doing that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you too, John.
Well, I'll second your motion, John, just to keep this moving. I think this is a good project. I'm always concerned with what goes on at the streetscape level. And I think with the open plaza that has a lovely view of the historic buildings that are out, in the view line, was really nicely done. I think the building is a handsome building, and I hope it'll be successful. It looked great, so I second the motion.
So Janice, you want to do a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Schlager.
Well, I'd like to say that I appreciate the everybody's efforts from this, what we started with this ultra contemporary building to what they perceive as a more traditional building. But I have to say that there's not one thing that's exciting about this building. I think it's drab. I think it's dull. I think the windows look like motel sliding windows. I think that that it has been testified that there's texture to the gunmetal zinc battleship gray panels, but they still are gray metal. And the texture probably can't be seen unless you're looking right at the metal up close. I think the building adds no charm to our downtown area. I appreciate Ira Smith and Barton Ross's input on behalf of the town, but I just don't think this building suits our downtown. It's especially not next to and across from historic churches. The building to me is a big disappointment. It could have been something special and it's not, and I won't be able to support it.
Okay. Miss Willis,
Yes.
Mr. Rooney,
Yes.
Ms. Lockman,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmer,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Well, I'll just say this. I certainly want to also commend the work that's been done to kind of change some of the aesthetics, looking at the original colors, quite frankly, lack of color, and to see some of those changes, certainly want to make note of that and commend the work that's been done to try and improve it in that area. And certainly to my councilwoman's point, my colleague's point, ways to kind of make this have more of that or move more in that direction, I think, would have been and would be absolutely, benefit to the project. But in that regard and seeing the pieces that we have now, yes. Thank you.
Vice Chair Brodock.
Yes.
And Chair Nguyen.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck. Project.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and happy holidays to all of you.
You too.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. So next on our agenda, we have a resolution regarding our board consultants.
Yes, we have multiple resolutions. Report the Personnel Committee met and reviewed they discussed the proposals that were submitted by the various board consultants. The consultants that did have an increase, they were very modest increases in their rates. And so the resolutions that were prepared for tonight's meeting are to reappoint all of our current board consultants with the exception of the conflict attorney, as Mr. Galvin is no longer representing land use boards. So we did issue an RFP for that, and we will be coming back to the board with a recommendation for conflict attorney at a different date. I did receive some comments. Number one, a minor correction to the resolution for the board attorney, which I will make to have the correct year referenced in the second to last paragraph. I received a couple comments from board members on the board engineer, which we can make. There was a suggestion that we ask if the rates could be reduced by one of the board members. And a clarification in the final paragraph that the $3,000 that's coming out of the municipal budget for the board engineer is really for incidentals. It's not a retainer. It's in case the board asked our consultant to look into something that's not associated with an application. And that gives us some funds to have them do some additional work. For instance, looking at our stormwater management ordinance, we may need them to give comments on that over the next year. So are there any other comments on the resolutions for the board professionals? I think the way we've done this in the past is we haven't voted on them individually, we've voted on them en masse. So.
Unless someone has any objections, we should go ahead and do that.
So in that case, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the resolutions to reappoint our board professionals.
Just let me ask you a question first, Janice.
Sure.
I had suggested that because of the current economic conditions and the budget restraints in town, that we would ask our professionals to give us a rate reduction. Has that been done, or would that be contemplated, or is that appropriate?
That has not been done. We have not asked them for a rate reduction.
And that is not an appropriate ask at this point, given what's going on?
I really don't even know how to respond to that. I think.
Well, we haven't done it anywhere else. We haven't done it on any other areas for townships. So I don't see how we could just ask the planning board consultants for that. It would have to be something that's done everywhere, I would think. I mean, it's never ending.
I mean, I don't know what's going on the council level. I'm just thinking, you know, working in corporate America, when you have issues going on, you would typically ask your vendor, hey, things are not good going on. We need a rate reduction this year. Some of our consultants don't make all that much money, so that doesn't seem to be appropriate, but others of them do. So if you ask them, I mean, this is not my decision. I'm just throwing it out there. We're probably want to see what the council's point of view on this is. That's all.
So if I can ask anybody who's not speaking, can you please mute yourself, because we are getting a lot of feedback right now.
I mean, I don't see these rates as being particularly high, and so they don't really faze me too much. I think, especially since most of them are, paid out of escrow, or most of the time is paid out of escrow, it's a little less concerning. But it's an interesting point. I'm not sure if right now is the best time to ask for a decrease, but maybe rather than change the rate, maybe it's to just decrease the amount of contractual spend, so that we could rein it in that way if we needed to, or and then if we needed to exceed that, well, we certainly could take that up as a board to say we'd like to raise that budget amount, but maybe that would address that concern as well.
I agree with.
Just as go ahead, Chair Wayne.
I was going to say I agree with what Keith says, but by the same token, unless the town was making an effort to do this across the board to all the professionals who render service to the various boards and organizations in town, I would not feel good about doing it with our professionals, because I understand the flip side of the coin, where it's also hard for them during these days, to maintain their earnings and to keep their businesses afloat also. So.
Just as a note for the township side of things, speak council pieces, as is the practice, it's not just during these times, but the township does go out for proposals for positions like this. So that is where you get your cost check of, obviously there are other bidders who come in and can come in with different bid amounts in terms of their dollar amounts. So that is cycled through not every year for every position. It's, staggered as to which ones go out for proposals. But through that process, you then capture either a check on what the costs are or a savings if you choose to switch at that point. And we have had instances where even the current individuals in positions have bid, lower amounts. So, through that process, it happens. We haven't had like hey, go talk to a specific vendor and say you should lower your rates. In this instance, it happens through that. There's a process, and that process does lead to those cost savings that are, I think, the intent of the ask in this case.
Okay, I mean, I just thrown that out there because we're in extraordinary times, and I'm sure that the taxpayers are concerned about management of our funds. And these are, no bid contracts. So I understand, obviously, that's something that we should be doing across the board for our professionals.
Daniel, did you have what you want to say?
Chairman, Ms. Dana Miller, last year, when you said you were entertaining bringing NV5 on again, you wanted a reduction, and we did that last year, and this year we're holding our rates constant. So we're at a rate that's actually lower than 2 years ago. I don't know what anybody else is doing, but we're very appreciative of the work, and we're honoring that.
Oh, thank you for that perspective. We also, in terms of going out for bid on the process, it's a lengthy endeavor, and we just recently went through that. And I don't know, with it just strikes me that the situation too, we don't know long term, how much longer it's going to last. We are hopeful that it will be short, but we just don't know. And certainly it's not something that we can, that we necessarily will dismiss in perpetuity. But I think at this point in time, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. Anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, actually, I would just like to jump in for a moment and also point out that we haven't increased our rates this year either. And as far as the incidental review category goes, I don't believe we've actually even charged to that in 2020. There may be some need for it in 2021, as Janice mentioned, but that's money that's really just been sitting there unused.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. Janice, do we?
I don't have a motion yet. I'm waiting.
Okay, then I will move to approve the current roster as submitted.
A second.
Is that Carmel? Okay. I'm going to call the roll. Mayor Spiller?
Yes.
Mr. Cook? Councillor Schlager?
Yes.
Ms. Willis?
Yes.
Mr. Rooney?
Yes.
Ms. Lockman?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmer?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Vice Chair Brodock?
Yes.
And Chair Nguyen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Before we get to anything else, I just want to mention that we did have receive a resignation. Mr. Barr has stepped down from the board, effective immediately, due for personal reasons. And I'd just like to offer my thanks on behalf of the board to him for all of his work and service to us, and to let him know that he'll be missed. we have payment of bills.
John.
Yes, Ms. Willis.
Okay, before we get to payment of bills, we had a conversation that you were going to get back to me on with regard to the hearing that's coming next week and trying to get some clarification in terms of whether or not where we are with the bifurcation division of the. You were going to explain to me exactly what was going on there.
Right, and I did try and call you earlier today, and did leave a message. And it was as we discussed. I think it's just a misunderstanding in how the memorandum on the issue is being read. But Janice, since you wrote the memorandum, if you would just explain so that everybody's clear on the procedure that we're going to follow with respect to the circulation and master plan issues that are coming up at our next meeting and the resolution involved with that.
Right. Well, the public hearing has been noticed, and all the documents have been uploaded to the website and sent to the appropriate agencies. And it's really it clearly states that it's to amend the Unified Land Use and Circulation Plan. It's redlined. It shows the new language that will be included on those few pages in the redevelopment plan that are being considered by the board. Once we have the public hearing and we hear the comments of the board members and the comments of the public, the board will then adopt a resolution that confirms, if they do decide to amend it, that confirms the amendment. And in that resolution, any other language that comes out of this public hearing will be put in the resolution and memorialized by the board. So in terms of the process, you have the document that the board, that's that part of the public hearing that's been disseminated to the public. The resolution is what we're talking about. Will have even more specific language that clearly or clarifies that the board is adopting the plan and that reiterates how the Safe Streets Design Guide will be utilized. And that's the process that we intend.
Sorry. So there'll be one resolution at the end of the process.
Right.
That will contain basically what we determine how we determine to change the language in the master plan as a result of hearing the comments from the public and also as a result of our discussions.
Right.
So does that clarify for you, Carol?
Not fully, because from my reading of it, and I was particularly struck by that paragraph that is in where we say we're going to discuss the two plans. And it looked to me as though there are two sections of the master plan that we're speaking of that are being recommended for some inclusion, and only one of those is being held in the first discussion. So I'm trying to figure out if we're going to amend the section 2.1 of the master plan, which we've had the paperwork for, and in addition, we're going to try to add something to the beginning of the master plan, why we don't have both parts ready for handle at that one meeting. We only got one section of it. It seems to be that there are two sections involved. We only got one of them to work with.
Carol, the resolution's not part of it is not part of what's being considered by the public. The resolution, which always goes in the front of the plan, is really the board's determination. It's not part of the public deliberation. The public doesn't make comment on your resolution.
Okay.
So you don't put the cart before the horse. You've got the amendment, which is presented at the public hearing, and you hear it, and then once it's approved, then you draft the wording for your resolution that will be put in the plan.
So then the part of what the board was doing that was supposed to deal with the, let me just look at, the board had discussed that we have prepared the part of the 2.1 that's going to be a part of our master plan. But we had also talked about putting something in the document. And it seemed to me that the portion that was supposed to go in the document, you were proposing now go in the master plan. And that is what's confusing me. So if we're not going to put something in the document, where is it going to go? Nowhere?
We're putting it in the master plan, Carol. We're putting it in the section in the master plan that will incorporate the guide that we're adopting. We're proposing that we attach the guide as an exhibit for reference purposes. But the language that we will change, that we talked about putting, when you say put in the beginning, it's not in the beginning of the master plan itself, it's at the beginning of the section of the master plan that we are adopting. It's not in the beginning of the whole document, it's only related to the specific area of the master plan that we're talking about. So, the master plan is really a compilation of individual plans dealing with individual topics. There's one area where we're changing language, and within that change, we'll be incorporating the document that was prepared by the professionals, with the state of New Jersey. And once that's the proposal, and then that's what we're having the hearing about doing that. And then at the end of that hearing, we will adopt a resolution that will say, here's what we're actually putting into the plan, based on the outcome of the hearing that we hold and our deliberations, in connection with that.
Okay, well, my concern was, John, that as a board, we had passed the idea that we would be amending the master plan on the condition that we were going to put something in the document that let everybody know right in front of the SAFE plan that how it was to be used. That was what we had passed as a resolution. When we said that we were going to have a hearing on it, we said that we were going to have the hearing based on the fact that the concerns that were raised when our consultant on NV5 came to us, that we had some concerns and that we wanted to put certain kinds of restrictions in terms of how it was to be interpreted. And we were going to put those in the document itself. Now, we never undid that resolution.
I think misreading the resolution, Carol. This is what we are doing now with this process. But we're not changing the language of the document that was prepared, by the consultant. We're not doing that. We are changing the language. We are adding language to the current version of the proposed language to clarify how that document will be used. That language is not going in the document itself. The document is becoming an attachment as a reference piece. And the language that explains what to do with that is going to be in the actual body of the master plan that we prepared.
Okay, well, this is a change from what the board originally decided. I remember that on the 21st, NV5 came, we had a discussion. They agreed with us that a number of things that we had concerns about were significant concerns. The board passed and voted on a resolution, on on a motion that said that what we were going to do is to do both. We were going to put something in the master plan and change it. And we were going to put something in the preamble up front of the document that was going to let anyone who picked up the document understand what the limitations were in terms of how that document was to be used. That is what we passed as a board. We never unchanged that. Now what we have is only half of that.
Carol, are you reading from the resolution?
I'm reading from what the board passed and saying what happens to that commitment.
Are you reading from the resolution or are you summarizing?
Well, what I'm saying is that
Are you reading from the resolution or are you summarizing?
Oh, no, I'm reading from the resolution.
So let's go back to the resolution that you're talking about.
It wasn't a resolution, it was a motion that the board passed, and I'm reading exactly from it. It's in quotes. It says the master plan will be amended in reference to the SAFE plan on condition that the SAFE document is accepted to be a design manual and will include a board-approved preamble that explains how it is to be used. That is what we voted on and passed.
And that's what we're doing. We're putting that preamble language in the master plan itself. It explains how it's going to be used, and the document will be attached as an exhibit.
Well, from what we passed as a resolution, I was under the impression it was going to be in two places because as long as the document is attached to it, it's going to be held.
That's read doesn't say that it's going to be in two places. So this is basic. Again, I think it's just really. I think it's just a misunderstanding, Carol. I think we're on the same page.
I think we have come a long way, John. And I'm not trying to.
What is the rest of the board? So what is the rest of the board? I mean, am I misremembering? Am I misunderstanding? Or what? What does the rest of the board have to say about this? We're not getting anywhere in this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Your reading is the same as mine. Yeah, I don't know if anyone had any other interpretation, but.
Who's reading?
That's what I understood it. Chair Nguyen. Chair Nguyen, the way you're reading it and discussing it is the same as I understood it, the same as I think we all discussed it, and that's where we are in the process, and that's why we've gone about it the way that we have. I'm not sure where the misunderstanding may lie.
And I'm not sure where the problem is, Carol, that if we're doing it this way, how it differs from the objective of what you're saying.
As I say, I think that what we have done has come a long way. And I think that it is helpful that the document will be attached to the master plan if we're going to use it. But I don't know that the public who deals with this unit is going to, I think it's going to be more confusing to the public than it will be to board members who actually are going to read the master plan. The public is going to read the document, and it's nowhere in the document itself. And I'm not going to push it because I think that if everybody else reads it that way, that's fine with me. But I raised it as an issue because I know that we said specifically that we wanted to see the writing in the document itself so that people who read the document would not have to guess about it. And we said we were going to put it in a preamble right up in front of the document itself. And we always knew that we were going to also amend the master plan. So I saw it as two parts. Now, if everyone else on the board is satisfied, then I'll drop it because it's maybe just me.
It's stronger to have the language in the master plan, though. I think was kind of the consensus approach that we took, is you actually, in the master plan, any reference to the document, any positioning of the document, it's a set of options.
Well, we agree on that.
Guide.
We agree on that. We agree that it should be in the master plan. That's never been questioned by me. I thought it should be in the master plan and in the document. I've never said it shouldn't be in the master plan. We all agreed that would be in the master plan. It was always discussed that would be in the master plan, but we also said that it would be in the document itself. And I recall that at that meeting, there were 3 abstentions that said, we want to wait and see how the portion that your committee was supposed to be writing was going to reword it for the document itself. But if it's not of concern to anyone else, I think I'm willing to quite drop it as a discussion. I don't think it's worthwhile. But I do appreciate the fact that we had a chance to clarify it, and thank you very much.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Then if not, I guess we're settled. And we're about to discuss payment of bills.
I would move to approve the bills.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Okay, everybody.
See you
Thank
next
very
Monday.
much. Yes, thank you very much for your time. Same bat channel, same bat time. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night.